A very good afternoon, everybody. Today is the second day of our presentations, and in this afternoon slot, uh, 16 students are going to make a presentations on the literature which was published after Second World War between 1950 and 2000. Let us start with the first presentation by Vanita, and she is going to make a presentation on From Big Brother to Big Data, the relevance of George Orwell's 1984 in the digital surveillance age. You are using 1984 as the title, so you have to italicize it or you have to use it in single inverted comma. If possible, in the title, use the proper title, spelling 1984. That will be more advisable. So you can start with the presentation. Yes, Vanita, you can start with your presentation. Yes.
So, hello everyone. Today I am presenting on from Big Brother to Big Data and how 1984 is still relevant today. These are my academic details and presentation details. My research question is that how relevant is 1984 by George Orwell in understanding modern digital surveillance system in the age of big data. In my presentation's hypothesis is that the surveillance of a system depicted in 1984 by George Orwell anticipated many aspects of modern digital monitoring. Therefore, technologies such as social media tracking, facial recognition, and big data analytics demonstrate that Orwell's warnings about constant surveillance and loss of privacy are increasingly relevant in a contemporary digital age. Introductions. So 1994 by George Orwell is a famous dystopian novel that portrays a society controlled by totalitarian government. In the novel, citizens are constantly monitored through telescreens and strict surveillance systems. So in modern digital era, surveillance has taken new forms through smartphones, CCTV cameras, and social media platforms. Technologies such as big data allow governments and corporations to collect and analyze a large amount of personal information. So these developments make Orwell's warning about surveillance and loss of privacy highly relevant in today's digital society. So how surveillance is in 1984. So 1984 is a famous novel that portrays social control by totalitarian government. In the novel, citizens are constantly monitoring through telescreens and strict surveillance systems. The figure of Big Brother represents the idea that people are always being watched, creating fear and obedience among the populations. So, in the modern digital era, surveillance has taken new forms through smartphones, CCTV cameras, and social media platforms. So the concept of Big Brother is the symbolic leader of the party and represents absolute authority and constant surveillance. So the image of Big Brother appears everywhere in the novel through posters and propagandas, reminding citizens that party is always watching them. So, characteristic of Big Brother's rules: strict control over information, history, and truth by the party, use of fear and punishment to maintain political powers, so, and suppressions of individuality and independent thinking. Here is a dystopian control and fear. So, in 1984, surveillance is not only used to watch citizens but also to control their thoughts and behaviors. So, the ruling party maintains its power by creating a system based on fear, strict monitoring, and manipulation of information. Methods that are used by party in the novel. And here is the rise of digital surveillance age. So in the modern digital era, technological developments have created new and advanced forms of surveillance. So governments, organizations, and technology companies now use digital tools to monitoring and analyze people's activity in everyday lives. So these technologies collect a large amount of data which can be used to observe behavior, predict actions, and influence decisions. Here is the examples of modern surveillance technologies like CCTV cameras are widely used in public places such as streets, shopping malls, and airports to monitoring people's movement and maintain security. Then smartphone tracking, facial recognition technology, online data collection. These technologies allows governments and companies to gather and analyze massive amount of personal information and all things. Here is big data and digital monitoring. Big data refers to large scale collection, storage, and analysis of massive amount of digital information generated through online activities, digital devices, and internet platforms. So in the modern digital age, governments, organization, and technology companies are used big data to observe patterns in human behavior and make data driven decisions. Here uses of big data, tracking online behavior, like organizations monitor users browsing history, search activity, and online interactions. So analyze user performance, like data analytics helps companies to understand individuals interests, habits, and consumer choice. So, as a result, big data creates a powerful system of digital monitoring that can influence social, economic, and political activities. That rising important concerns about privacy and personal freedom. Here how social media collect our data. So in digital age, social media platforms play a major role in collecting and analyzing personal information from users. So more popular platforms allow people to share their options, share their opinions, photos, and daily activities, but at the same time they gather a large amount of data about users behavior and performance. So this information is often used by companies and organizations to understand users and influence their decisions. So here is a types of data collected by social media platforms. Here is similarities between 1984 and today. So in 1984, a society where people are constantly monitoring and uh, controlled by the governments, and today technologies described in the novels. All the technologies described in the novel are fictional. Many aspects of modern digital society shows similarities to Orwell's dystopian visions. So advances in digital technology, data collection, and online monitoring have created system that resembles the surveillance methods and which is described in 1984. Here is a comparison between Orwell's world and the modern digital world. And here is a difference between 1984 and today's uh, time. Here is also difference between 1984 and today. And here is concerns. The rapid development of modern surveillance technologies has created several important ethical issues in contemporary society. Tools like smartphones, social media platforms, and online monitoring system collect large amount of personal data, which can affect individuals' privacy and freedom. So these technologies raises serious concern about how personal information is collected, stored, and used by governments and corporations. Here is major ethical issues of digital surveillance. And my conclusion is that Orwell remains highly relevant in the modern digital age. The novel portrays a society where constant surveillance is used to control citizens and limit their freedom. So through devices like telescreens and the presence of Big Brother, Orwell illustrate how monitoring can influence people's behaviors and thought. And in contemporary time, society technologies such as smartphones, CCTV cameras, and social media platforms and big data enable governments and corporations to collect and analyze a vast amount of personal information. So although these systems are often used for security, communication, or commercial purposes, they also raise concerns about privacy and data control. So, therefore, Orwell's dystopian vision continues to be meaningful today, and remaining society to remain aware of the risk of excessive surveillance and the importance of protecting individual freedoms. Here are my references, and thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Hello. So, Vanita, my question is that if people willingly share their data, is it still surveillance?
Yes, I think if we willingly share our data, we may give terms, and we may agree with terms and conditions. So we don't know how they use our data. But I think it is surveillance if we share our data.
My question to you is Big Brother always negative or can it ever be positive?
So, in the 1984, Big Brother is completely negative because he snatch people's freedom and thoughts. But in today's time, surveillance can be positively, because some tools like CCTV cameras and other tools use it for positive purpose, and they give importance to mm, they okay, CCTV cameras are important for us to increase crimes and other things. So it can be positive sometimes, and it can be positive sometimes, and uh, and I think that surveillance can be negative only when it's snatch our freedom and power and our thoughts. So thank you. This is from my side.
You pronounce this word use, the past tense of use as used. If you can see in this classroom itself, you will see here that how to pronounce the word. Can you see here? Is it written? Used also is there. So when to speak the, when to speak id, and when to speak neither the nor id but the. It is watched, watched, helped. So there is a t sound there. When it is with this word like h, p, those, and with dt it is this, and use, use, it is the sound, used. So this all also can help you in improving your pronunciation if you minutely in your free time in the recess keep on observing around both the classrooms and even lab also. Even in the lab and other things, there are many such things. If you pass your free time with these things, you can learn a lot many things.
Yes, sir. So, hello everyone, myself Sitiba Gohil, and my today's topic is the architecture of control, a comparative study of Orwellian fear and Hughlesian pleasure. So, here is my academic details and presentation details. This is table of content. So, my research question is: do Orwell's pain-based model of totalitarianism control in 1984 and Huleg's seductive pleasure-based model in Brave New World represent mutually explosive dystopian paradigms, or do contemporary society synthesizes both mechanism to achieve political compliance, and which model carries greater explanatory power for the digital surveillance age? And my hypothesis is shown in it that how Huleg's soft totalitarianism model and engineering concern through algorithmic pleasure, and we can see that in contrast of it, Orwellian's hard totalitarianism instruments, the most significant contemporary threat emerges from a hybrid synthesis. States that stimulously sedate populations with pleasure, and we can see that how they both are trying to control people at that time, in which both authors have written. And we can see that both have done some of the control, and they have stopped stopped doing things like they did they distract people, civilians, from freedom. This is what my hypothesis is telling. And so let's start with introduction. two of the 20th century's most consequential novels, George Orwell's 1984 and Hewlett's Brave New World, stand as the two pillar of dystopian literature. Both imagine society in which individual freedom has been extinguished, yet they diagnose the mechanism of that extension in diagrammatically opposite ways. Orwell envisions control through pain, and Hewlett's envision control through pressure. Together, they define the entire spectrum of totalitarianism possibility. And we can see social and historical context. In 1983, it was completed. It was completed in 1948. The title formed by reversing the two last digits, directly inspired by Stanley's Trier show trials, purges, and it was post World War II's austerity and rubble grey London pervades the setting. We can see that it was influenced by Zametin's V and Jack London's The Iron Heel. And in Brave New World, it was published in 1932, and the great dimension mass employment at that time. And we can see that Ferdinand's psychology underpins the condition and sexual motives. We can see that how in Brave New World people were people's focus was on entertainment and other things rather than the society, what was happening in society. And the people at that time were not that much thinking about their freedom and anything else. Their focus was not on freedom or anything else. They were busy in their own life. Hard totalitarianism in Orwell's architecture, and we can see that people were surveillance at that time. Their thoughts were restricted, and we can see that physically they used to torture people physically. And we can see that there are some things like something like room number 101 or personalized terror, and people used to torture them that much that their freedom of thinking was changed after that. And we can see that in 1984. And in soft totalitarianism in Brave New World, we can see that it was in this way Huxley is written that people at that time was given entertainment. They do not have that much thinking at that time that what society was going under through or anything like that. Their main focus was on like living their life luxuriously or everything like this. These are the key difference between hard totalitarianism and soft totalitarianism. Deeper analytical reading, we can see that in 1984, consent is manufactured through terror. Winston does not choose to love Big Brother. He is broken into it. The state must constantly expand energy manifesting fear. Orwell's dystopia is therefore unstable at its core. It requires endless brutality to prevent the collapse of a system built on resentment and pain. The state is its own worst enemy. We can see that. And in Brave New World, citizens consent enthusiastically. They want their soma, their feelings, their pleasure of things. They want that rather than freedom or anything. And we can see that this makes Brave New World system radically more efficient and stable. There is no underground, no brotherhood, no resistance, because no one is suffering enough to rebel. This is Huxley's most chilling insight. These are the 5 thematic dimensions of dystopian control. Contemporary relevance in digital age. We can see that how digital age, we can see that people are addicted at some point with social media and entertainment. As per Brand New World in Huxley also have that theory in it, that how people are always in entertainment themselves and living their life in digital world rather than thinking about other things. And like this we can see that Orwellian concept, that how people always watching things like through social media we can see that we are surveillance, giving permissions to our personal information and other things. And these are the AI and the hybrid dystopia. These are the other perspective. Synthesis. And my conclusion is the hard totally Orwell's vision has not become obsolete. As of 2026, over half of the world's population live under governments. They develop active surveillance, politically impoverishment, and ideological terror. His warning is not a metaphor, it is a living operating manual for authoritarian states. To dismiss 1984 as dated is a dangerous complacency. And we can see that Huxley's vision is the dominant diagnosis for literary democratic society. Algorithmic distraction and comfort, engineered desire as not merely Huxley's metaphor, they are the business model of the digital economy. The citizens of Brave New World are the most commercially profitable subjects ever conceived. So here are my references and thank you. Questions are welcome.
So my question is that how does the treatment of the truth differ in these two dystopias?
Uh, uh, in 1984, we can see that how George Well has shown in his book that pain, suffering, violence is seen in it. How people's thought are stopped by making them manipulate and torture them, that they can change their mind at that time. And we can see in Brave New World, Huxley also does, but in software we can see that how in that time people were distracted. They make themselves that much busy in their lifestyle that they does not think about society or other things, that what is going on at that time. So we can see two difference, that's soft and hard side of both dystopian novels.
Fundamental difference between Orwellian and Huxleyan control.
We can see that as their writing, we can in their writing we can see that Orwell has written in a way that is like violence is most seen in it. And we can also see that manipulation and other things like manipulation, control, and freedom of speech and thinking are controlled at that time in this. And in Huxley Huxley's work, we can see that in Brave New World, people were distracted from the truth. We can see that now also we can see we does not know full truth about anything. There are like half truth and half false things in it. And like that only, Huxley also shown us half like not half, also full. We can see that distracted people from thinking and their freedom, people was not focusing on their freedom. They were like entertainment, their main focus was on entertainment. Thank you, that's all from my side.
Good afternoon, happy learners. So let's deep dive into the vast ocean of a totalitarianism where the dictatorship lies. My name is Siddharth Chauhan, and today I am going to present on a perpetual war and the politics of truth, reading 1994 in the age of modern conflict. Here is my academic detail and a presentation detail. Here is a table of content from where you can go the site, the information which I going to take. Here is the first introduction, World in a Crisis, Historical Roots of a Orwellian and Dystopian Society. Here is the brief introduction about the text and what the text wants to say. I'm not going to discuss about that. I'm suddenly coming on the point, the anatomy of a machine, where you can show the big brother is on the top and the Ministry of Love is on the bottom of the this triangle. Orwellian dystopia offers a nightmarish vision of a totalitarianism in which the manipulation of history became a central instrument of a political control. My research question and hypothesis. My research question is that how does 1984 represent surveillance, propaganda, and the manipulation of truth as a mechanism of a political power, and how can this framework help interpret in modern political discourse? My central argument, my hypothesis is that this presentation argues that George Orwell's dystopia reveals a political authority as operating through three interconnected mechanisms. The first one is the surveillance and the observation. The second one is the propaganda and ideological discourse. And the third one is the control of a historical truth. Together, these mechanisms enable political system to shape both perceived reality and the public consciousness. Power and discipline. Theoretical framework. Many scholars interpret Orwell's novels through theories of a power developed by Michel Foucault. Foucaultists argue the modern political power functions through a disciplinary system and a surveillance rather than a direct violence. That we show in today's world also, there were no perfect disciplinary system in our political system. This perspective allows us to understand the party as a disciplinary institution that regulates social behavior. I also quote one quotation, Orwell's dystopia present a nightmarish vision, that I also discuss in further slide. Watching eyes, surveillance, and the politics of the observation. There is a quote in a 1984 that told this big brother is always watching you. In the society of 1984, citizens are monitored through telescreens, microphones, and the third police. The constant presence of a surveillance eliminates the privacy and individual anatomy that we can show from the character of the novel. Surveillance therefore became a mechanism for regulating everyday life. This subtle and the temporal control of every activity serves as a disciplined individual within a totalitarianism society. And also the continuous observation produces a conformity by encouraging individuals to regulate their own behavior. Words as a weapon. We have also one political leader that tells that mere priya bhayo or behno. That words can shows that how they betray their own individual to make their introduction very high. The party maintains authority through a propaganda disanimated by institutions such as the Ministry of Truth. This institution revives historical records, modifies newspapers, and alters public memory that we can show also in modern time. Ideological conflicts are fought largely through propaganda and psychological warfare. In Orwell's dystopia, information is constantly manipulated to reinforce parties' ideologies. People are showing their videos and other activities to reinforce their party's ideology. Propaganda therefore shapes collective perception of a reality, and citizens are exposed only to state-controlled narratives. Scholars argue that in 1984, language becomes a political instrument through which regimes controls truth, ideology, and the public's consciousness. Further, I can discuss about the truth on a trial, manipulation of a history, and memory. In 1984, propaganda and surveillance operate simultaneously. This process demonstrates how authoritarian systems construct political truth through the manipulation of language and historical memory, shaping how citizens under reality. What they do, their bad things in their past, they are now when they come in authority, they all bad things are erased by their power and authority. This combination creates a comprehensive system of ideological domination. The totalitarian engine, total propaganda meets a total surveillance, that shows powers in Oceania isn't sustained by a catching dissidents. It is a sustained because the combination of observation and narrative control fundamentally prevent citizens from ever conceptualizing resistance. Language in chains, newspeak and the limit of thoughts. Orwell introduced newspeak, a language designed to reduce the range of a human thought. They seize the thought of a human and show how the authority wants to work. By limiting vocabulary, the party restricts the possibility of political dissent. Language therefore become a powerful tool of ideological control. As a scholar argues, the purpose of a newspeak is to ensure that thought crime should be literally unthinkable, because there will be no words which express it. Scholar speaks literature review, a critical perspective on Orwell. Here I am discussed about the scholar interpret 1984 is a powerful critique of a modern political war. James Tyron, drawing on the theory of Michael Foucault, argues that Orwell's dystopia represents a nightmarish vision of a totalitarianism, where surveillance disciplines social behavior. Further, I also I embed one article that explain the ideological conflict in a modern societies are often fought through the propaganda and the psychological influence rather than a direct violence. Here also one scholarly article that argues that Oceania is sustained through a political myth, perpetual war, and a propaganda which shape citizens' perception of a reality. Together, these all three scholarly articles, I want to show that Orwell's novel relieves the mechanism through which political system control the society, and that also happen in nowadays. Text meets the theory. Evidence from the novel. What the novel wants to show now today's reality. Orwell summarized the party strategy through the famous line, who controls the past, the future, the controls the present, control the past. That shows the person who controls the future also controls the present and also control the past. This statement illustrates how political power depends on a control over historical memory and knowledge. Here I am also put one image that shows how this connected with the Orwellian idea. From fiction to reality, contemporary relevance. What kind of a relevance today's society have with this novel? The political mechanism depicted in 1984 by George Orwell remains visible in a contemporary global politics. Everywhere we can see now the war was going on, and in that war we can also relate that things with that. Recent geopolitical tensions such as the US-Iran conflict illustrate how political narratives and media framing shape public perception of a war. In such a context, information became a strategic instrument of a political power. Scholar argues that modern conflicts are often fought through propaganda and psychological influence rather than a direct violence. That we show a false narrative was also produced and also gave on so many social media platforms. Thus, Orwell's novels provides a critical framework from understanding how control information shape political reality in the modern world. Echoes of Orwell, contradicting reflection that shows the analysis demonstrate that Orwell identities three central mechanisms of a political demonstration. The first one is a surveillance system that disciplines and regulated individual behavior. The second one is a propaganda and the ideological discourse that shape political perception. And the third one is the manipulation of historical truth that reconstruct collective memory. That shows this process demonstrate how authoritarian systems construct political truth through the manipulation of a language and historical memory, shaping how citizens understand reality. That shows Orwell's warning is that the most dangerous form of power is not a physical violence, but the ability to control the truth, language, and memory. You can make violence, and after that, you cannot hold the truth of the people. But by the use of truth, language, and the memory, you can hold the power of a people. Here is a work cited. My justification of a research question and hypothesis. My research question are justified by the questioning examines how 1984 represents the surveillance of a propaganda and the manipulation of a truth, mechanism and a political power. This inquiry is significant because Orwell's dystopian narrative is widely regarded as an exploration of a modern totalitarian politics. Here I also embodied two critical scholarly quotation that shows scholar argues that authoritarian regimes sustain authority not only through a correction but through system of a surveillance, ideological control and the regulated social behavior. My hypothesis also justified by saying that the language and historical revisionism in sustaining political authority, particularly through a mechanism such as a newspeak and the manipulation of a collective memory. The political structure of Oceania itself illustrates how regimes maintain stability through propaganda, perpetual war, and a disciplined social order. Therefore, the hypothesis proposed that Orwell's dystopian demonstrates how political authority operates through three interconnected mechanisms that I also mentioned in a conclusion. My learning outcome from that topic is that understand how 1984 represents surveillance as a mechanism of a political discipline. Analyze the role of a propaganda and ideological discourse in shaping political perception. And evaluate the novel as a literary critique of a modern political system and authoritarian governments. And the biggest learning outcome of this topic is that how today's world is a play bit like a Big Brother's world. Thank you. Now the questions are welcome.
Okay, just keep the slide open, previous slide. This one. So in the morning session, we had one question that to get full score in the research section, how to integrate the citations and sources there. So here we can take this as a case study. That what is it to integrate. So in that point also you can get full score. In the second paragraph, here we see that scholars argue, and then who are the scholars? We see Tyner and Sen, and they might be cited. Which works are there? Can you open that? Citation, Tyner and Sen. No, that let it be in the citation only. In the citation.
No.
So we see that. And now if you want to refer to where he is telling that, then we have to open that article. Yes, now open that article. So in the article, where is it said? Whatever the claim is made in that paragraph, that is integration. So accept all cookies, and if you can, then you can come down to that particular. If there are page numbers, that can also be mentioned. So we can easily go to that page number, or some phrase should be given. So we can search that phrase and land at particular page in an article to see it is properly integrated or not. Otherwise, only general idea is taken, which people might be taking with the help of AI also. If you give this article and tell that what is this article, and then it gives summary, and I pick up a summary now, but then I have not read the article. So my integration is limited in that case. Then come back to your paragraph in your PPT. I think it is open only then. It's, in the near window, it might be open perhaps, the next window. That slide. Okay, so this you have to like Tyner and Sen, both we have to pick up that particular thing. And when you speak, when you present, then you don't have to say scholars argue, but you have to name them in your presentation. When we write, it is fine. We say that there are several scholars and they are writing, but in your presentation, you have to name those people, that so-and-so person in this article published here in this year argues, makes a point, tries to make a point of view with which you agree, you disagree, whatever you are doing with that way you have to say. So it is in the citation, but when you present, you should be speaking that article, that book, title, the person's name also. That is called a perfect integration of all the sources that you are making to get full score in that research arena. Okay, now we can have the questions. Yeah.
So, if political power can shape reality through surveillance and manipulation of truth, to what extent can individuals resist such systems without independent access to information?
Good question by Vanita. The answer of this question is that the reality is the shaped by the individual, and that show in the 1984 that surveillance, the camera, the character also hide the diary, and after they wrote in that diary. So that shows how individuals receive such a system without an independent action. All the surveillance, the camera, and the all things that shows the also the term newspeak and double thing that shows how individual can resist their ideas. Another question.
So question is, do you think modern digital surveillance and media ecosystem are created conditions similar to Orwell's dystopia, or do democratic institutions still provide enough protection?
Yeah, the answer of this question is that I am bit agree with that question, that I have also big brother in front of me, and what can I speak is also recorded by them. So we can say that the 1984 is not thoroughly connected with the today's world. So thank you. This is from my side.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chauhan Siddharth. My presentation topic is words, body, and power, multi-dimensional critique of George Orwell, 1984. This is my personal information and academic information. Table of content. Introduction. The text as a cultural artifact, 1984 is redefined not merely as a political warning but as a profound investigation into the relationship between self-hood, language, and reality. The core conflict. This study explored the tension between the inner party's total control and the individual rebellious body, the only space where the party reality is physical tested. Uh, uh, this combines linguistic and physical analysis to understand human survival. It also connects to today world war digital surveillance and algorithm act like a modern telescreens control how we think and behavior. This is my research question and hypothesis. Research question to what extent does the human body function as an autonomous site of somatic truth in 1984? And how does the party synthetic erosion of language newspeak attempt to dismantle this physical selfhood hypothesis? While the party successful use newspeak and double thing to colonize the individual's mind, the biographical reality of the body expressed through desire, pain, and sickness remains a persistent fragment of objective reality that the state can only destroy through total physical annihilation. Literary review: the erosion of reality. Weber argued that the party use of language is a method to limit the capacity for thought, effectively destroying the individual's grasp on objective reality, selfhood, and language. Further emphasized that without the words to describe freedom, the concept itself becomes unthinkable. The destruction of vocabulary is the systemic destruction of the human soul. This means language shape identity and existence. The novel presence in digital achieve also show how history is today, just like in 1984, inform can be make truth and unstable. 1984 analysis, the scaffolding of newspeak, eliminating the heterogeneous newspeak function by removing shades of meaning by turning bad into ungood. The party strip language of its emotional weight and historical depth, creating a linguistic prison. The double think scaffold using Feather's framework, we see how language force the mind to hold to contradictory beliefs simultaneously, leading to the depth of the self through force cognitive dissonance. 1894 analysis, rebellical body, the varicose ulcer, physical manifestation of Vincent's suppressed anxiety. Jacobs note that it only begins to heal when Winston begins his rebellion with Julia, suggests that physical health is tied to political autonomy. Double thinking force people to believe contradictory, destroy logical reason. Winston work into the minister of truth. So how history in rewriting language becomes a personal shaping reality according to the party's power. Comparative analysis, order and choice, the, the control and individual freedom. The party create a fixed unchanging order, while Vincent mirror memories represent choice and individuals. His memory like the glass paper height or old rhythm help him reconnect with the past. Discussion the false profit of the proless. The idea of hope in the proless, Vincent believes that the proless represents freedom and natural humanity. However, critics argue that this is a false hope. The party controls them through entertainment, alcohol, and destruction. The ideas of a revolution becomes an illusion. The dream in other systemic and the belief in the prowess is used to trap and control individuals like Winston. Conclusion: the enduring mirrors Orwell works remains a scaffold for understanding how power operates on the human psyche. It warns that when we lose our language, we lose our grasp on reality. It saw how power control both language and human mind. Why the body can resist for some time without language and identity. The novel wants us protect our language and personal freedom. Otherwise, we risk loss our sense of reality, just like Vincent, who realized too late that nothing truly belongs to him. This is infography and references. Thank you. Any question?
So after showing your presentation, so my question was that how does language function as a tool of ideological control in 1984?
Ideological control 1984 is through newspeak to restrict by eliminating complex vocabulary and reducing meaning. The party ensures that rebellious idea cannot even be from this with linguistic determinism. The idea that language shape reality, the control our language becomes control our consciousness.
So my question is, how does the novel critique the idea of absolute truth?
The novel is 1984 suggests that truth into observed but can be manipulated by uh, those in power. The party slogan 2 plus 2 into 5, that reality itself can be received when authority control knowledge and beliefs. Thank you from my side.
Hello, good afternoon everyone. Today's my presentation's topic is 1984 versus Handmaid's Tale versus Black Mirror. How dystopia is a culture warning, how Atwood's feminist dystopia and Brooker's tech dystopia extend Orwell's project. Here is my academic detail and presentation details. Here is table of content. And in the introduction, dystopia fiction does not describe impossible future. It takes the most dangerous tendencies of the present and follow them forward, forcing the reader to confront the cold plausibly occur if nothing resists. In George Orwell 1984, modern template a totalitarian state that controls the citizen not merely through violence but through the systematic destruction. In Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale, enter the tradition direct but redirect its focus. In Charlie Brooker's Black Mirror, relocate the same anxiety into the digital age. This presentation argues that these three works from a coherent critical tradition across 70 years, each one asking the same question in a different historical moment. That what does power look like when it no longer need to be visible? My research question is, do Atwood and Handmaid's Tale and Brooker's Black Mirror extend Orwell's dystopian project, or do they depart from it so fundamentally that Orwellian framework can no longer account for their warning? And the hypothesis is Atwood and Brooker inherit Orwell's core proposition that power perpetuates itself by destroying the capacity for memory and authentic experience. But each author relocated that mechanism, Atwood into gendered body and Brooker into network technology, revealing the limits of Orwellian political statistic model. Here is my key milestone dystopian media that 1949 when the George Orwell's 1984 published. In 1985, Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale was published. In 2011, we can say Netflix released the series Black Mirror. Orwell's core mechanism, destroying memory of destroy itself. Oceania's power rests on the mutability of the past. Who controls the past, controls the future. Who controls the present, controls the past. A formulate Thorpe reads as the structural heart of mind control in 1984. Doublethink holding two contradiction beliefs simultaneously is not an aberration of logic but is systematic replacement. The party does not persuade its program, making free agency structurally impossible in Oceania. In Winston, rebellion fails because it remains individual. His diary, his affair with Julia, his encounter with O'Brien, each act of resistance is already anticipated and absorbed by the system, confirming the party total Pentarian of private space. In Gillette's method, the body as the new site of control. In Gillette does not destroy the memory through ministries and slogan. It destroyed identity by cancelling a woman's name, concentrating her biological and telling her a body is in habit belong to the state. Offered knows is exactly we are two-legged worms, that all sacred vessel ambulatory chalice. In Atwood's narration technique, reference the argument offer begin as a fragmented, disjoint voice and gradually consolidated into a full consciousness. Her narration is itself acts of resistance. The from freedom to speech of Aunt Lydia delivered to the handmaids is Orwell's own doublethink applied to gender. In Brooker's platform, protest, absorb, converted, and sold black. In 15 million merit being saved from months to buy a slot on talent show, stand up with a shade of glass at his throat, and delivered genuine cry of rage against the system that owns him. The judges applaud. They hire him. His rage becomes a weekly broadcast slot. The glass stays as his thought, and what was once real desperation is now a scheduled performance. Hertogson and Woodka supply what Orwell could not have imagined. The dopamine loop of social media feedback is psychologically addictive, engineering desire to throttle that user experience capture as freedom. The ADIB's nature replacement the state's new eye. Hated in the nation, bees are exhausted. The ADI's robo-bees were built to pollinate the country's flora, a clean solution to a genuine ecological collapse. They also grace shows allow the government total nationwide surveillance as a capacity never disclosed to the public built into the same tiny bodies that carry pollen. This is what Orwell's statist model cannot account for. The surveillance architecture with no ministry, no soldier, no big brother, just infrastructure doing two jobs at once. The three dystopia and the same mechanism. When we see the power structure, in 1984, we see the totalitarian state and the party. But in Handmaid's Tale and Black Mirror, there were theocracy and corporate algorithm. If we see mechanism in 1984, we can see the double thing, memory hole and newspeak. In Handmaid's Tale, there are body conscript and dopamine loop. Individual, if in 1984 there was Winston and the Handmaid's Tale offered, where the existence become departure, Orwellian limit. Orwell's model needed a visible enemy. Oceania, the party, big brother power that can be named faced at last theoretical oppose. In Gillette and Brooker's platform offer no such regret. And McKenna identifies a political weakness in Brooker's aesthetic. The working masses in 15 million merit appear as a passive manipulated crowd with no internal agency, which limit the critics' radicalism. In Hertogson and Woodka complicate the behaviors, assumption, undying, all three. Smartphone addiction arise through psychological disclosure, no individual or state deliberately designed, which means no single villain can be held responsible. In Browning's argument about dystopian fictions use value points at what Orwell pessimism forceless. In critical reflection, what the argument establishes and what it can. The argument stand at the edge. McKenna critics Brooker's works as a passive Bowen mess suggested that Black Mirror may concisely replicate Orwell's own political limitation and rather than correcting them. A strong counter reading would be argues three texts are not a coherent project at all, but three discrete response to discrete crises whose surface similarly are genre and convention, not genuine continuing. The research question retain its value regardless, asking whether Atwood and Brooker's extend or depart from Orwell's forces a precise answer to what Orwell's project actually was, which is the more useful question than a genre reception usually demands. In conclusion, the mechanism argument holds Orwell discovering that power perpetuates itself by destroying the capacity for independent thought. It is shared inherent. Atwood and Broker resist without amendment. Brooker's take dystopia is the most immediately urgent, and dopamine loop and the surveillance swarm are not projections but present condition, making Black Mirror as the most acting warning. Here we can see the how core mechanism works in 1984 in Brooker's film and the Atwood's work in Black Handmaid's Tale. Here are the references. And now thank you. Open for question.
So my question is that how do Atwood's and Brooker's works recollect the covered dystopian mechanism for Orwell's 1984?
If we see the 1984, there are a single enemy like Big Brother, who is the core enemy and control the whole nation, control all their mind and history and all, change the language and concise the dictionary. If we see in Handmaid's Tale, there is a this shift comes to the body of woman, how the body of woman is used by the government and used for only a child, only for the child. But in Black Mirror, we can see the control is self, and the people give control own self to the other. Next question.
My question is why Orwell's idea do not perfectly fit today's story?
If we see in Orwell's 1984, there are a single enemy, Big Brother. We can point him out and say he is the enemy. But in Handmaid's Tale and the Black Mirror, there are no single enemy. There are multiple and we can't see them. It may be a multiple algorithm and data structure and all. Thank you. This is all from my side.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today's my presentation topic is unreliable messenger, epistemic crisis, discursive instability, and the collapse of authority in waiting for Godot, and the contemporary post-truth world. Here is my academic and presentation details. table of contents. My research questions is that how does the figure of the unreliable messenger in Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot represent an epistemic crisis and discursive instability, and how does this reflect the collapse of authority in the contemporary post-truth world? Hypothesis. Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot use the idea of unreliable messenger to show that when communications becomes unclear and unconcise, it create an epistemic crisis. In this situation, truth becomes difficult to know, language stop working properly, and authority breaks down because nothing can be confirmed. This breakdown of communication shows how meaning comes unstable. It also reflects today's a world where truth is uncertain and often constructed through different opinion, media, and interpretation. Introduction. Waiting for Godot is an important work of absurd drama that does not follow a traditional storytelling. Instead of present a world where nothing seems to move forwards, the play shows uncertainty because the characters are never sure about a time, place, or their situation. It also shows repetitions as some actions and conversations happen again and again without progresses. Because of this, there is a clear lack of meaning, as nothing leads to a final conclusion or purpose. Thus, features reflect deeper issues in the play. Truth become unstable, communication fails, and there is no clear authority since Godot never appears. As a Martin Aslin explained, this kind of drama shows how meaning and communication break down in the modern world. So these presentations will shows how the play connect to idea like epistemic crisis, instability of language, and collapse of authority in a post-truth world. A theoretical background. The play is rooted in absurd theater, which present a world where life does not follow a clear logical structure or a meaningful order. Human actions fails to produce progress, and events appear repetitive and purposeless. This creates a sense of crisis in meaning and human existence. Alongside the play is also linked the postmodern thoughts, which questions the existence of fixed or absolute truth. Instead, it suggests that truth is unstable and shaped by a different perspective and interpretation. Taken together, this two perspective helps us understand the world of the play as a one where meaning is uncertain, truth is unstable, and knowledge becomes unreliable. Uh, this theoretical framework directly leads to the central concern of the play, particularly the epistic crisis, where knowledge itself break down, and discursive instability, where language fails to communicate meaning effectively. Unreliable messenger. In a Waiting for Godot, the boy appears a messenger from a Godot, but his role is unclear and unreliable. His statements are inconstant because he gives a different form of information each time he appears, which makes it difficult to trust what he says. His message are repetitive, and he only repeats that Godots will come tomorrow without editing any new or useful details. He shows uncertainty because he cannot clearly explain Godot's intentions or confirms when he will actually arrives. As a result, communication in the play becomes unstable and meaning is not fixed or clear. Uh, this creates a strong sense and uncertainty for both characters and audience. Epistemic crisis, loss of certainty. Character experience fundamental uncertainty about key aspect of existence. Time like past, present, and future lose clear distractions. Memory like recollections are fragmented, unreliable, and contradictory. A purpose like action lacks clear motivation or ultimate meaning. This create a condition where lived experience become unstable and confusing. Collapse of meaning because knowledge itself become unstable. Character struggles to interpret events correctly, trust their own perspective. Language failures. This crisis is intensified by the breakdown of language. A word fails to represent truth. Actually, communication becomes indirect, ambiguous, or incomplete. Discursive instability. In a waiting for Godot, language does not work in a clear or stable way. Repetitions of dialogue shows that character keeps saying the same things without progresses, which weaken meaning. Uh, Contradictions appear when characters say things that conflict with each other, creating confusion. Meaningless is exchanges occur because conversations of lack clear purpose or logical sense. Collapse of authority. In a waiting for a god, there is no visible or stable central authority that governs actions or a meaning. The figure of God, the function as a absent authority, never appear at continuously shaping the character's actions. This absence create a system where authority not real or present but continuously deferred and imagined. Post-truth world. In the modern world, truth is no longer fixed or the sum for everyone. It becomes uncertain and open a different opinion. Truth becomes unstable, it keeps changing depending on the situations and viewpoint. Constructed it is shaped by language, media, and people's idea. Fragmented different people believes different versions of truth. In waiting for Godot, the characters are confused about what is real. They cannot remain things clearly. Information in unclear and often delayed. Argument synthesis. In waiting for Godot, the unreliable messenger function as a key elements that exposes the instability of truth, since the play depends on uncertain delays and unverifiable information. The boy gives unclear and changing message, which makes communication unreliable and prevent the character of trusting what they hear. Contemporary relevance. In today's world, misinformation shaped quickly through digital media and communication network. Marketing truth harder to verify. As a result, people often face conflicting and unstable versions of truth, which create a confusion and distrust in information system. philosophical contrast. The slide present a philosophical comparison between two approaches, the truth and existence. Sarah Kierkegaard emphasizes faith, beliefs, and subjective certainty, where truth is achieved through personal commitment rather than objective proof. In a contrast, waiting for God represent a world of doubt, uncertainty, and absence of stable meaning, where truth cannot be confirmed or fully known. Conclusion: Waiting for God is not just a simple absurd play, but a deeper reflections of the instability of truth in a modern thoughts. It shows a continuous crisis of knowledge where character are unable to confirm what is a real or curtain. This is my learning outcomes. References. Thank you. Now questions are welcome.
My question is, how is waiting for God connected to the post-truth world?
It is connected to the post-truth world because both shows no truth is not fixed and often uncertain. In a waiting for Godot, the boy's message is not clear and every time changing about a Godot. So the character message about a Godot, so the character cannot know that about a Godot. In a today's post-truth world, people see a different version of the same news on social media and news channels, which makes the difficult to understand what actually truth.
My question is, how does your work challenge traditional reading of Waiting for Godot?
In Waiting for Godot, the traditional reading focus on mainly existential despair and absurdity. My work extend this by connecting the play to epistemology and post-truth theory, showing that it is not only about meaninglessness but also about instability of truth and communication system. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My presentation topic is The Anatomy of Political Conscience, George Orwell, From Imperialism to the Cold War. Here are my academic and presentation details, table of contents, research question and hypothesis. My research question is, how did George Orwell's transition from an imperial policeman to an anti-totalitarian icon reflect a shifting tension between his desire for aesthetic enthusiasm and his political purpose? My hypothesis is Orwell's political identity was forged through a rejection of institutionalized authority, first in the racialized law of Burma and later in the ideological dogma of Spain. However, his ultimate status as a state privileged writer during the Cold War created a complex paradox where the critique of Big Brother is repurposed as an instrument of state propaganda. My introduction is Post 1936, writing for Orwell became an explicitly defensive and political gesture. The desire for aesthetic enthusiasm is superseded by a historical impulse to see things as they are. In his famous essay, Why I Write, Orwell states, "No book is genuinely free from political bias. The opinion that art should have nothing to do with politics is itself a political attitude." Every line of his serious work, he states in his essay, he ever written was after 1936 perhaps directly or indirectly against totalitarianism and for democratic socialism. The imperial foundation, law, race and performance of authority. The Burmese were treated as an inferior race. Though the law was supposed to be the same for all, it was interpreted to favor the British. It was the main experience for George Orwell to have served in Burma as an imperial police officer. The enforcer of empire is portrayed as a victim of the system. This enforcer of empire is can be interpreted as George Orwell, forced into a theoretical display of power to avoid ridicule. Orwell, in his essay, another essay, Shooting an Elephant, says that I perceived in this moment that when the white man turns tyrant, it is his own freedom that he destroys. He wears a mask and his face grows to fit it. This prison of prestige identifies the psychological cost of maintaining a racialized legal hierarchy. The modernist pivot, a disillusionment and a documentary realism. Orwell also borrows some significant formal strategies from the war books and from the tradition of literary modernism, especially the device of a limited, prejudiced, and confused narrator. For those who fought in Spain in Spanish Civil War, defeating Franco was crucial to prevent a wide conflagration, shifting the focus of modernism away from mourning and towards active prevention. In 1984, Orwell writes, "History has stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right." Totalitarian logic, language power, and the erasure of history. What Orwell learned in Burma about law and order as an imperial police officer had important repercussions for the development of his political views and for his future writing about power and violence. The two main sources of his the two main books are 1984 and Animal Farm. Power is no longer a mean to an end. It is the end itself, achieved through the systematic destruction of language. Orwell writes in 1984, "History has stopped. Nothing exists but an endless present in which the party is controlled. Party is always right." This is the language which George Orwell uses. The geopolitical structure of 1984 reflects lingering imperial anxieties where the racialized other is permanently subjugated. The Cold War paradox. The Cold War here is the Spanish Cold War, which was from 1936 to 1939. Orwell's radical left-wing reputation would ensure wider currency, stronger credibility, and greater efficacy in the officials' ideological battle against the Soviet Union. The collaboration with the Information Research Department illustrates a state-privileged status mirroring the hierarchies he critiqued. Officials were capable of using Orwell skillfully and clumsily, for the most part promoting his works, on other occasions distorting them. While some, like Frances Stoner, have criticized Orwell for having confused the role of the intellectual with that of the policeman, the majority have put their weight behind Crick and Astor. The evolution of concise comparative synthesis. George Orwell served in the imperial police officer in Burma. This was his. He was a part of government at that time, and he experienced such a racialized attitude towards the Burmese people that these kind of situations made him write things like 1984. And then comes the radical George Orwell, fight with the POUM militia Spanish Civil War, which rejects of propaganda and the pivot to political realism. The visionary authorship of 1984. The 1984 is not the end of his career, and it is just the uh, first part of his peak career. Language is a tool for total ontological control. He uses language to enlighten the people against propaganda and totalitarianism. But at the end, what happens after his life is the most crucial part. In most of the part, uh, George Orwell writes in such a way that you cannot grasp the meaning by taking the surface level meanings. But in this might have contributed a lot to the various interpretations of his works, such as 1984 and Animal Farm. And in the Cold War, many states privileged they state used George Orwell as state managed asset, and they used Orwell just against himself. The way Orwell might have not have able to accept it. The legacy of a managed conscience. As Shaw writes in his article, I hope this study adds to our understanding of how politics and literary culture interpreted during the Cold War, and how popular Cold War images could be formed with clandestine assistance from government. These are my references. Thank you. If anyone has any questions.
How did Orwell's real life experience as a police officer in Burma influence the fictional world he created in 1984?
As an officer, George Orwell served in Burma, and where Burmese people were cruelly subjugated by the colonizers, Britishers. And in this manner, the Britishers could stand for the party, and the people like Winston Smith can stand for the Burmese people. Another question.
My question is, do you think Orwell would have agreed with how Western government used his writing as propaganda during the Cold War?
This is the most crucial part in George Orwell's writing. When he died, no one was able to grasp the meaning of his works entirely, but the general people do not know what George Orwell wants to say. In texts like Animal Farm in 1984, you can just read them as normal literature, and you can read them as a critique of government as well. But what played a most significant role in shaping the influences and interpretations of these texts is that when George Orwell died, the Cold War in Spanish, and the government used George Orwell against himself, against the idea that George Orwell might not have accepted. And his texts were supposed to oppose these ideas that were proposed by the Spanish Civil War government. Thank you, everyone.
Hello everyone. Hello everyone. Today I will represent this topic culture, memory and aesthetics, the floating world from Japanese art to Kazuo Ishiguro. I will start my topic before I introduce these quotes by Pablo Picasso. Art washes away from the dust of everyday life. So here are my academic information and presentation details, table of content. And now let's move on the research questions. How does the concept of the floating world evolve from traditional Japanese art to modern literary representation in an artist of the floating world? So, a hypothesis is the floating world originally associated with pleasure and transient beauty is reinterpreted by Kazuo Ishiguro as a symbol of memory, guilt, and cultural transformation in post-war in the Japan. Now let's start with introductions. The concept of the floating world occupies a significant place in Japanese culture and artistic history, originally associated with fleeting pleasure, beauty, and the transient nature of the life. It later evolved into a complex symbol reflecting deeper philosophical and social meanings. In traditional Japanese society, the floating world referred to the urban culture of the Edo period, particularly the pleasure district where people sought temporary escape from rigid social structures. However, in modern literature, especially in Kazuo Ishiguro's An Artist of the Floating World, as we know that published in the 1986, this concept undergoes a profound transformation. It shifts from the representing external pleasure to internal psychological states such as a memory, guilt, and moral reflections. So, this essay explores how the floating world evolves across time from artistic celebration to a symbol of cultural industry and finally to a narrative of personal and national introspections. So the meaning and historical context of the floating world. The term ukiyo literally translates to floating world, suggesting impermanence and the fleeting nature of the human existence. During the Edo period in 1603 to 1868, this idea became closely associated with the urban life. As we know that particularly in cities like Edo, in modern Tokyo. So the meaning of the historical context is the term floating world means a world that is temporary and always changing. It became popular during the time of the period of Edo, and especially in cities like Edo now is Tokyo. So it refers to lifestyles focused on the enjoyments and such as the theaters, tea houses, coffee houses, and the Jaishak culture. This was not just a place but a way of thinking that value short lived in the pleasure and beauty also. So here is the overview of my topic. In this infographics, I will always include the floating world show that the connection between art, memory, and the cultural identity, and it explains how to traditional Japanese ideas evolves into the modern times, and also refers to the where artists reflect on the past, reshapes and memories, and express through the thought of changing and cultural in today's society. So, floating world in the Japanese art, one of the most prominent expressions of the floating worlds is found in ukiyos, and these artworks depicted a scene of everyday life, including court scenes, kaburi actors, and landscapes. Artists sought to
capture movement of the beauty and the pleasure, emphasizing the ephemeral nature of the existence. Lane highlights that these prints were widely accessible and reflected the taste of the common peoples, making art and a part of the daily life rather than an elite activity. So, moreover, the mass productions of these prints indicates an early form of the culture commandifications. So, the floating world as a cultural industry in contemporary criticism, particularly in the work of Bas Cormes, as I mentioned in my work cited. So, the floating worlds is the analyzing through the lens of cultural industries. Uh, this perspective aligns with the idea that the floating world was not just about pleasure but also about economics exchange. So, in the floating world, we can see that the scene of a cultural industry where art is produced not just for beauty and but also for profit and consumption. So, as argues by Bas Korkmaz, this show that how culture becomes influenced by capitalisms. Now let's move on the Kazuo Ishiguro and the reinterpretations of the floating world. Kazuo Ishiguro, an artist of the floating worlds, offers two modern reinterpretations of this concept. The novel is set in post-World War II. Japan and follows the life of Masuji Ono, and again painter who reflects on his past. So the Kazuo Ishiguro redefines the pattern of idea and floating world in his novels and artist of the floating worlds. Instead of pleasures and the beauty, it becomes a world of memory, regret and guilt show through the life of Masuji Ono. Memory, guilt, and moral responsibility. A central theme in Ishiguro's novels is the relationship between memory and guilt. So, Ono gradually realized that his artistic contributions supported imperial propaganda during the war. So, in this topic, we can see that the people remember things in the way that protest themselves also. So, Ono slowly realized his role in supporting wrong ideas, showing that artistic are morally responsible for their works and its impact on the society. Comparative analysis. Traditional versus modern floating worlds. The contrast between traditional and modern interpretations of the floating worlds reveals a significant shift in cultural values. So, in this topics, I also mention Edo period, the floating world meant pleasure, beauty, and escape. So, in modern times, it represents guilt, reflections, and consequences of the past actions. Critical perspectives from scholarly sources, which I also mentioned in my references. Scholars have offered diverse interpretations of the floating worlds. Goldberg views it as an illusion that mask deeper social realities. So, and some see it as an illusion hiding reality. Others focus on its artistic and cultural values. Some highlighted to the social, economics, and political aspects, as we can see that here. Modern relevance of the floating worlds. In today's context, the idea of the floating worlds remains highly relevant. Modern society, characterized by consumerism and digital media, often mirrors the transient pleasures of the Edo periods. So, here is my conclusion parts. So, the evolutions of the floating worlds from traditional Japanese art to modern literature illustrated a profound shifts in cultural and philosophical perspectives. So, ultimately, the floating world serves as the powerful reminders of the transient nature of the life and enduring impact of the human action. Here is the learning outcomes, and here is work cited. Thank you. Now question are welcoming.
How does Kazuo Ishiguro connect memory with floating world?
Okay, so Kazuo Ishiguro showed that memory is often selective and shaped by personal guilt and self justification also. Next question.
My question is, how does the floating world relate to contemporary artists today?
It shows that how artists balance real creativity and their art with the pressure of fame and trends in digital platform. And I also mentioned many artists are lost their own passions and art in their own life because of some kinds of politics and all that thing. So I will thinking about like that your art and skill are always being with your personality and identity, but it should never and it's always be a part of life, and your art is permanent, so be with there in your life. Thank you so much. This is from my side.
So, hello everyone. My name is Priyanka, and today I'm going to present on existential waiting and political power, a comparative study of Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot and Harnold Pinter's The Dumb Waiter. Here is my academic details and presentation details. This is the table of content, and this is the infography which I created with the help of Notebook LM. And let's start with introduction. Theater, let's see first theater of absurd. The theater of the absurd presents human existence as a fundamental and unstable to devoid to inherent meaning. It rejects linear plot and rational structure to expose the irrational condition of the modern life. First, we see the theater of absurd in Samuel Beckett's existential waiting. In Waiting for Godot, waiting is not merely an action but a permanent condition of existence. Vladimir and Estragon's endless waiting reflects the perpetual difference of meaning in human life. In Harnold Printer's The Dumb Waiter, in The Dumb Waiter, waiting operates within a structured system of authority and control. Interaction between Ben and Gus reveals how power functions through hierarchy and unseen command. So my research question is, how does waiting transform from existential condition to mechanism of control in absurd drama? And second is, in what ways do Beckett's and Pinter's use silence, repetition, and uncertainty to control different meaning of waiting? So my hypothesis is, while both plays belongs to the theater of absurd, they contract fundamentally different model of human existence. In Waiting for Godot, waiting signifies the endless deferral of meaning and purpose. In Dumb Waiter, waiting function as a structured process of authority, discipline, and obedience. Moving further, let's focus on theoretical framework. And moving further, waiting for Godot, existential waiting. First is waiting as a condition, not an action. In waiting for Godot, waiting is not an event but a permanent state of existence. The absence of action shift from events to experience of waiting itself, and deferral of meaning. Like Vladimir and Estragon, waiting reflects the continuous postponement of meaning and purpose. Persistence despite uncertainty reveals the human tendency of seek meaning even in its absence. In absurd structure and inaccation, the play replace progression with repetition, silence, and curricular dialogues. This structure exposes the inability of human existence in achieve resolution of certainty. Moving further, let's focus on waiting for Godot's symbolical authority. They divided into 4 parts. First is authority through absence. Godot never appear, yet his expected arrival structure the character's entire existence. Authority operates not through presence but through anticipation and belief. Second is dependence and illusion of meaning. Vladimir and Estragon continue to wait, believing God will provide purpose or resolution. This dependence reveals the human tendency to relay existential source of meaning despite uncertainty. Third is power as an uncertainty. Godot's authority emerge from uncertainty, delay, and expectations, not direct control. The characters remain psychologically bound to an authority that never conforms itself. Fourth is symbolical function of Godot. Godot can be read as a figure of hope, salvation of abstract authority that endlessly deferred. This reinforces the absurd condition in which meaning is promised but never fulfilled. Let's focus on the dumbwaiter political power. First is hierarchy as a structure of power. The relationship between Ben and Gus is defined by an unequal hierarchy. Ben embodies authority and complains, while Gus is questioning, expose instability within the system. Second part is in dumbwaiter, invisible authority. Commands arrive from the unseen sources through the dumbwaiter system. Authority operates within visibility, yet maintain complete control over the character's action. Third part in dumbwaiter is discipline and obedience. Ben's unquestioning obedience reflects the internalized discipline within a power structure. Gun's growing anxiety reveals the tension between individual doubt and systematic control. So moving further, let's see waiting and obedience in dumbwaiter. It is also divided into 4 parts. First is waiting as a suspended action. Ben and Gus remain confined, waiting for instruction that never arrive clearly. And waiting creates a state of constant tension, uncertain, and preventing independent action. Second is controlled communication that reflects the order delivered through the dumbwaiter system appears in irrational and disconnected. Third is obedience obedience vs anxiety. Ben's unquestioning complaints reflect internalized obedience to authority. And fourth is surveillance and control. The unseen authority function as a system of continuous surveillance, monitoring, and regulation behavior. Let's compare these two play with some of aspects. Like first is type of waiting. Which type of waiting we can see in the both play. Like first is waiting waiting for Godot. Waiting reflects the endlessly deferral of meaning. And in dumbwaiter, waiting function as a state of informed and expectations under the authority. Authority is first in waiting for Godot. Authority exists through absence and belief. And in dumbwaiter, authority operates through order and hierarchy and control. Third aspect is characters relationship. First, in Waiting for Godot, shared existence marked by mutual under uncertainty, and in Dumb Waiter, structure hierarchy marked by dominance and submissive. Absurdity aspect is absurdity in Waiting for Godot emerge from inaction and repetition, and the other side, absurdity emerge from control, communication, and tension. Last is function of waiting. Waiting reveals the collapse of meaning, and in the other side, waiting sustain a system of power and discipline. We can discuss in three aspects. Like, first is author absurdity as a condition of modern existence. Both present a world defined by instability and uncertainty and lack of resolution. Second is transformation of waiting. In Waiting for Godot, waiting reveals the impossibility of attaining meaning. And third is authority without presence. Both play contracts authority as a unseen yet effective. So from my presentation, this study demonstrates that the theater of absurd is not only concerned with the meaninglessness of human existence, but also with the way in which human life is structured and controlled. In Waiting for Godot, waiting emerge as an existential condition that reflects the endlessly differing of ultimate absence of meaning, as the character remain trapped in cycle and anticipation without resolution. In contrast, the dumb waiter presents waiting as a political mechanism through which authority, discipline, and hierarchical control are maintained even in absence of visible power. Taking together both play. This play reveals that modern human existence is shaped by dual condition: the absence of meaning and the presence of control, where individuals are complained in weight and purpose, yet remain constantly subject to unseen structure of power. This is my learning outcome, and these are references. If anyone has any question, feel free to ask.
Okay, so Priyanka, my question is to you. How does the concept of waiting differ philosophically in Waiting for Godot and the Dumb Waiter?
So, in Waiting for Godot, waiting reflects the absence of meaning and existential uncertainty, and in the Dumb Waiter, waiting function as a tool of authority and through control within a power structure.
My question is, how does the use of unseen authority shape the actions of the characters in both plays?
In Beckett's, Godot's absence create an illusion and hope, controlling characters through belief. And the other side, in Pinter's, unseen authority directly controls the behavior of the characters, and through order, discipline, and hierarchy. So thank you so much, everyone. This is from my side.
So good afternoon everyone, myself Priya Rathod, and today my presentation topic is master-slave power structures, Pozo and Lucky in the context of capitalism and labor exploitation. These are my academic details and presentation details. This is table of contents. So my research question is, does the Pozo-Lucky relationship in Waiting for Godot function as a sustained allegory for capitalist exploitation, or does Beckett's existentialist frame resist reduction to political economy? This study hypothesizes that in Waiting for Godot, Pozo and Lucky symbolize the capitalist owner and the exploited laborer, illustrating a Marxist power relation between capital and labor. Pozo's domination reflects the commodification of labor, while the Act 2 reversal exposes the instability of this hierarchy. The rope and the cyclical immobility symbolizes the workers' structural entrapment within the capitalist systems of exploitation. Let's start with the introduction. Waiting for Godot presents a dramatic world where characters remain trapped in repetitive waiting. When Pozo appears with a Lucky tied by a rope and carrying burdens, the stage visually represents a domination and labor exploitation. This dramatic image reflects the capitalist structure in which workers remain dependent on those who control economic power. Mastery, labor, and control, the Pozo and Lucky dynamic. Pozo's commands and physical control over Lucky demonstrate the hierarchical labor relation between master and worker. The rope around Lucky's neck symbolizes economic dependence. Here, Pozo directs Lucky's movements and even his intellectual activity, such as ordering him to think. These actions illustrate how capitalism controls both physical and intellectual labor. This table represents two opposing social positions, master and slave. Pozo is a landowner who commands and controls, while Lucky is the laborer whose identity is defined by service. Even when Pozo become blind in Act 2, the structure remains unchanged, and this represents that capitalist power relation persists beyond the individual circumstances. The commodification of labor in Pozo's ownership of Lucky. In Marxist theory, commodification occurs when labor become a product to be controlled or sold. Lucky's labor, including carrying burdens, dancing, and thinking, belongs to Pozo. Pozo even considers selling him at the fair, treating him as a property. This shows how capitalism reduces workers to commodifies valued only for productivity. The fragility of authority and the durability of structural power in Waiting for Godot. Although Pozo appears powerful, his authority depends entirely on Lucky's labor. In Act 2, we can find the Pozo become blind and Lucky becomes mute, helpless, and Pozo becomes helpless, revealing the fragile nature of individual authority. However, the power structures remain intact. This shows that systems of domination often continue even when individual within them weaken or change. Existential entrapment and the structural impossibility of exist. The play represents a world where escape seems impossible. Vladimir and Estragon cannot leave because they are waiting for Godot, while Lucky cannot escape because he is tied by the rope. This immobility symbolizes the structural entrapment of individuals within the economic and existential systems. Dramatic form as a political structure, cyclicality of and constant in Waiting for Godot. Beckett's dramatic structure here represents the idea of repetition and idea of repetition. The events of Act 1 and Act 2 repeat the little change. Pozo returns blind and Lucky becomes mute, showing disorientation. This cyclical form reflects the continuous cycle of capitalist exploitation, where conditions may worsen but the underlying systems persist. The limits of Marxist interpretation in Beckett's Waiting for Godot. Although Marxist analysis explains many aspects of the play, Beckett himself resisted the purely political interpretation. The play's absurd humor, fragmented structures and language, existential themes complicate a strictly economic reading. Characters like Vladimir and Estragon are not a part of labor relations. This suggests the play also addresses broader human existence. Beyond class analysis, the theological and existential dimensions in Waiting for Godot. Beyond the class struggle, the play also explores the theological and existential question. Godot may symbolize divine authority of spiritual meaning rather than economic power. The characters lack revolutionary consciousness and cannot image change. That emphasize the existential condition of uncertainty and dependence. Capitalist labor relations in Waiting for Godot, structural progress of exploitation. In Waiting for Godot, the Pozo and Lucky the relationship between Pozo and Lucky represents a structural progress of capitalist exploitation. Labor exists through the workers' efforts. Ownership is asserted by the master. Labor is extracted through the commands, and the benefits are consumed by the owner. Eventually, the worker becomes exhausted, symbolizing the destructive effects of continuous exploitation. The analysis confirms that Beckett's play can be interpreted as a critique of capitalist power relations. Pozo treats Lucky as a commodity that can be controlled or sold. Even when Pozo becomes dependent in Act 2, the hierarchy continues that demonstrates exploitation is not accidental but embedded within the social structures. Modern relevance, Pozo, Lucky, and the contemporary world of labor. The Pozo-Lucky relationship remains relevant today. Modern gig economy workers often experience similar dependence or cooperations that control tools, movement, and wages. The play anticipates contemporary debates about labor rights, algorithmic control, and economic precarity, showing how the capitalist system continue to shape modern working conditions. In conclusion, the relationship between Pozo and Lucky reveals how Beckett's absurdist drama also represent Marxist themes of power and exploitation. The rope, commands, and physical burden symbolizes the capitalist domination. Through repetition and disorientation, the play exposes the persistence of structural inequality and the enduring reality of labor exploitation. These are my learning outcomes. These are references, and thank you so much. Now questions are welcome.
So Priya, my question is to you. Does the Pozo-Lucky relationship reflect the economic inequality between developed and developing nation today?
Yes, the relationship between Pozo and Lucky can also symbolize the global economic structure where developed nation control labor, resources, and productions in developing countries. Just as in Waiting for Godot, Lucky produces labor while Pozo enjoys authority and benefit. In the same way, many developing countries provide cheap labor while multinational cooperation accumulate profit. Next question.
So, Priya, I want to ask that could Pozo's control over Lucky be compared to digital surveillance in modern workplaces?
Yes, Pozo's rope functions as a visible mechanism of control in contemporary workplaces such as surveillance technologies. Such as productivity software as well as GPS tracking serve as similar functions. Workers are monitored continuously. This act represents control in capitalism has evolved from physical domination to technological surveillance. Thank you. This is from my side.
Hello everyone, myself Nidhi Pandya. Today is my topic of presentation of paper number 107, the 20th century literature from World War II to the end of the century is Waiting for Achhe Din, Political Hope, Deferred Promises and the Existential Paralysis in Waiting for Godot in Indian Electoral Politics. These are my academic details, table of content. My research question is how does the Waiting for Godot staging of the fragmentation and the obsolescence of the two conception of hope parallel the deferral of the Achhe Din and the existential paralysis in the Indian electoral politics. Now my hypothesis is that Waiting for Godot models a weak phallistic hope that is mutilated but transfigured by the contemporary historical conditions and the directly parallels Indian voters' attachment to the deferred Achhe Din promises despite the neutralization of the progressive and the religious legitimates. Both the play and Indian politics negate the traditional grounds for hope and while refusing the nihilism, producing a responsible, self-aware hope situated to modernity apparate. Evidence from the Beckett text and the Adorn's aesthetics and the Indian scholarship on the fragile mandate and the majoritarian impulse and the fully supports this transform concept of the hope, showing that the hope persists as a fragmentary internally and the contradictory and uncertain yet remains none impossible. Introduction. Godot tramps why Godot speaks to the Indian politics today, that Godot's tramps wait endlessly much like the Indian citizens chasing the political salvation through the election slogans. The play's absurd routines echo over electoral cycles of the hope and the let down. Literature here diagnoses the real democratic struggle, as I find this comparison illuminating because it connects Beckett's timeless critique to our urgent political disappointments and the persistence of everyday hope. After that, Godot as a primary text. Direct passages from the Godot ground the entire analysis, where the passage passes the time, expose the monotony of the fragile hope. The boys' messages sustain the possibility. This line balance where the literary emphasis are requested. They mirror the voters' attachment to the Achhe Din signs, and the primary text evidence the strengthen the political reading thoroughly. Now, after that, from absurd theatre to the electoral absurdity. The Beckett's absurd world feels eerily familiar in the Indian politics, where the voters wait for change exactly as the Vladimir and the Estragon wait for Godot. Now, campaign promises create movement without the arrival. This intersection helped me understand why the hope survives by the repeated failures. It connects the literature's critique to the our daily democratic experience and making the Godot freshly relevant to analyzing power and disillusionment which we are facing today. After that, absurd waiting and the theater of the status. Godot's absurd waiting feels eternal through the relentless repetition. Here, Cohen and Esslin shows how the symmetry hides the development beneath the tedium. Characters cling to the hope despite the futility. This mirrors Indian voters' repetition faith into the Achhe Din promises. The slide demonstrates how the literature's diagnostic power for our political paralysis revealing why the hope persists amid evident the meaninglessness. After that, false consolation, the metronome of the Godot. Here, false consolation structures how the Godot action exactly as Randolph describes. Lucky speech exposes the tramp's mood swing, reveal desperate hope seeking. This pattern reveals despair but confirms the illusion. In Indian politics, the campaign's promises operate identically. But here in my slide, which is showing that how both literature and election exploit the human need for meaning while the blocking genuine change. Absolence of the progressive and religious hope. Here, Randolph powerfully shows that Godot negating both the progressive religious hope, and here Adorno's neutralization explains the historical impasse. Hope survives, transform, and the fragile. This fragmentation appears in Indian electoral promises, mixing the development within the identity. The slide here reveals that why the hope feels necessary yet the unjustified, urging us toward the responsible engagement into our democracy. Here we can see negative dialectics and the responsible hope. Adorno's negative dialectics frames the Godot's radical self-critic. The play questions its own consolatory power. By Randolph extend this by responsible hope. Indian citizens wait like a tramps, aware of the possible disappointment. This lens shows that how hope's values lies in the fragility. This slide teaches us that demand more from politics while accepting the uncertainty. Achedin as a Godot's political echo. Achedin becomes India's political Godot. The slog mobilized millions yet stay deferred. Voters kept the appointment with the hope like Didi and Gogo. This parallel highlights how the campaigns turn democratic ritual into endless waiting. This slide shows here that literature diagnoses our political experience with the precision and the urgency we feel. After that, vote mobilizers, Godot's modern companions. Here Shibler's and the Osterman reveals the Modi drew unpredictable mobilizers, yet their loyalty proved shallow and baseless and on their winnability. This echoes the Trump's contradictory attraction to the passing events of 2014 urges created a fragile mandate. Understanding the mobilizers explain why the electoral hope feels intense, yet the evaporates, leaving familiar the parallels. Fragility, mandate, and the shallow support. Here, the 2014 mandate appeared historical yet rested on the shallow mobilized support. Schieber and Osterman here wants that fragility. Godot's sudden mood shift mirrored this exactly. Hope surges around the victory but fades without the roots. This slide shows here that why the political paralysis persists despite intense campaigns. The centric FedEx and Mediterranean reality. Here, Palashikar argues that BJP centrism is a facade. Majoritarian impulses shift public opinion subtly while mixing with the development. Godot here shows that old hope foundation the fragmenting. This dynamic sustain voters' attachment despite the unfulfilled promises. The 2019 and the new Mediterraneanism. And here, Schieber and Verma document BJP's 2019 breakthrough via political Mediterraneanism, where BJP won the system with the 37 votes and 303 seats. Here, new collegial crossed traditional lines. This linked hope from the pure religion nationalism, yet it echoes Godot's fragile expectation. Here it is shown the dominant system sustaining hope through the consciousness while the risking deeper democratic paralysis. Revisionist modernity and the Indian hope. Here Kaviraj demands revising the modernity theory of historical differences. India's democracy improvises hope and uniquely. Godot's negation of the universal progress fits perfectly. Achedin embodies this fractured modernity. Here it connects the literary absurdity and the post-colonial politics with the precision. The idea of India and democratic paralysis. Here, Khilani scholar celebrates the Nehru's preamble, India now threatened. Godot's faint signs of different sustained hope. Both shows the democratic expectation, while losing the pluralistic identity risks the deep paralysis. Literature reminds us hope's values lies in uncertainty, not the certainty. Political reading of the Beckett. Here, scholar Boxall challenges pure apoliticism. Here, Godot's tension between the silence and speech are deeply political. Characters, contortion, and mirrors the voter's endurance. While the play resistance to the location echoes the India's identity debates. This reading makes the Godot urgent for understanding the democratic waiting and hope's cost. After that, existential paralysis in the politics and the literature. Existential paralysis unites Godot and Indian politics with the characters and voters be like go on, despite the futility. Here, the scholar Randolph highlights the hope ambivalence. Majoritarianism promises create motion without the change. Recognizing this condition fosters the critical awareness and the possibility of the fragile renewal in the democracy. My hypothesis is justified as the evidence from the Godot non-impossibility of the hope matches with the fragile yet the persistent electoral attachment to the deferred promises like the BJP's victory is more fragile than many assume and the mobilizer shallow and the potential fleeting. Support the confirm my hypothesis. Majoritarian slow shifting of the middle ground and new form of the political majoritarianism echoes the hope's fragmentation between the Pozo and the despairing clown Didi and Gogo, the hoping fools. It is probably better to be later. Now validates weak hope. Synthesis across the Beckett, Adorno, and the Indian scholarship fully justifies the hypothesis of responsible, fallibilistic hope. Literature and politics converge on the hope's transformation in modernity. Lessons for today. It is clearest lesson today is to embrace the Godot's weak hope. In Indian politics, voter must remain critically hopeful rather than fully despairing. Literature here shows us to navigate deferred promises without the illusions. This presentation and with a cautious optimism that responsible hope, though fragile, is the only stance modernity and the democracy authorize. Here is the conclusion. Godot and the Indian politics together demonstrate that hope through the fragmentary and the internal contradictory and the uncertain remains non-impossible and the essential even after the obsolescence of its traditional foundation. The play and the contemporary Indian electoral cycles both stage the apolitical predicament of the hope in modernity where false consolation sustain and participation without delivering the transformation. Here, literature equips us that critic deferred promises without the surrendering to despair, balancing existential critic with the democratic persistence. Here are my learning outcome. I understood the most impactful learning outcome from I get from this is that the connect of the textual analysis with the contemporary socio-political realities while reflecting on the need of the responsible and the self-aware hope in democracy. This is the infographic of my whole presentation. These are the references. Thank you. Now the questions are welcome.
So my question is the crisis of modern democracy that citizens keep waiting for better politics or that they fail to act when the possibility of change actually exists?
Actually, the media is really are the discourse because they are like giving the information with too much emotional, too much of biases, and they are only telling the information without telling the factual information, and they really don't think about the criticality of the things, but they just go on. They argue with coming out of the windows of the media, but that information doesn't even make any kind of sense. So yes, it may be it is connected with the Lucky's unnecessary speech. Yes, that will be my answer.
Hello. So my question is, does media discourage in contemporary politics enhance democratic awareness, or does it function like Lucky's speech, producing noise that sustain political passivity?
The question. Okay. So sorry. I was confused. Into this answer, this would be the first answer which I have given to this, because I was connecting with media, and I have said that media says about the emotional impacts which are shown, and they emphasize more on the factual information. And the first question answer would be that the people endlessly waiting for the certainty, but they do not invest into the action. They only wait and hope, but they do not critically come into that action and participation, and they are not even taking the responsibility, which if they take because they fear, because if they take the responsibility, the democracy will be truly developing, and that is the most of our fear. And people don't want to develop, that is why they don't take the action. That would be my answer. Thank you.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. So today we have a second day of our presentation series, and today I am going to present on topic waiting and consciousness of the absurd, a comparative study of the Beckett's Waiting for the Godot and Camus, the Myth of Sisyphus. So this is my academic details. This is table of content. So now let's start with the introduction. So first, 20th century literature reflect a crisis of the meaning and human existence, and the philosophy of the absurd explained by the Albert Camus in the Myth of Sisyphus describe the conflict between the human search for the meaning and the silent universe. The theater of the absurd discussed by the Martin Esslin represent this condition through the illogical action, fragmented dialogues, and the circular structure. Samuel Beckett's Waiting for the Godot dramatized the absurd throughout the endless waiting, uncertainty, and the repetition. This study examines how the waiting becomes a representation of the absurd consciousness in the Beckett's play in the relation to Camus' philosophy. So my research question is, how does the Waiting for the Godot represent the human experience of the absurd? In what ways does the waiting function as a form of existential consciousness in the play? And how can a Beckett's dramatic representation of the waiting be interpreted in the relation to the Camus philosophy in the Myth of Sisyphus? Hypothesis of this presentation is waiting for the Godot dramatizes the absurd condition of the human existence, where the individuals continue to search for the meaning despite the absence of certainty or resolution. The act of the waiting symbolizes the conscious awareness of the absurd, similar to Camus' idea that the human being must continue to live and the comfort meaninglessness. So now we discuss about the theoretical framework, philosophy of the absurd. The philosophy of absurd explains the conflict between the human desire for the meaning and the indifferent universe. Continuously, human race continuously desire for the meaning or purpose of the life, but universe remains silent. That's why the desire of the human to get the purpose of the life remain as it is. In the Myth of Sisyphus, Camus argues that the absurd arises from the confrontation between the human consciousness and the silence of the world. The absurd does not lead to a despair, but the lucid awareness of the continued existence despite the meaningless. The Martin Esslin connects the philosophical idea to the drama through the theater of the absurd, where the irrational dialogue repetition and circular action reflect the human condition. We know that in the Waiting for the God, the dialogues which is delivered by the Vladimir and the Estragon completely seems irrational or meaningless, and they also repeat their action and doing actions which are completely meaningless. And circular action, it's connect with the, as we know, there is 2 day of the Waiting for the God, and the first day and second day completely seems same. And the Samuel Beckett's Waiting for the God embodies this framework by the portraying endless waiting, uncertainty, and the search for the meaning in the absurd world. So now we discuss about the concept of the absurd, the myth of Sisyphus. At the right side of the screen, you all can see the infographics of the concept of absurd. And Albert Camus defined the absurd as a confrontation between the human desire for the meaning and the silent universe, where the absurd is born of the confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. Here we can see that in the infographics, the human desire for the meaning, for the search for the purpose, need for the answer, quest for the explanation. But what happens? Universe remains the silence. Universe not give us the any kind of answer. And what it reflects the ultimate, it reflects no ultimate purpose of the human race. And the understanding of this both thing, it's emerges the concept like the absurd, which contains two things: the meaninglessness of the universe and the human search for the meaning. When we understand or recognize this both thing, we can understand the concept of the absurd. And for the Camus, the recognition of the absurd does not justify suicide. It's mean, if we can't find the purpose of the life, it's not mean that it's not also justified the suicide. We should not have died. And instead of it require a lucid awareness. Lucid awareness mean the meaning of it's a recognition, or you can say that it's understanding of the human desire for the meaning and silent universe. It is the understanding of these both things. And the mythological figure of the Sisyphus endlessly pushing the rock uphill represent the repetitive purpose struggle that characterize the human condition. And we can see that in the infographic, the struggle of the Sisyphus, he endlessly pushing the rock uphill, but it seems completely meaningless. Camus ultimately argues that the awareness of the absurd lead to a rebellion, freedom, and acceptance. Rebellions against what? It's a rebellion against universe, and acceptance of the life as a human being must continue living while the confronting the meaninglessness of the existence. Now we discuss about the theater of the absurd. It's given by the Martin Esslin. Esslin defined the theater of the absurd as a dramatic form of the expression and the irrational, purposeless nature of the human existence. According to Esslin, absurd drama portrays a world where the traditional belief and the logical explanation collapse, reveal irrationality of the human condition. The structure of the absurd theater often rejects conventional plot. The absurd plays, basically absurd plays are completely different from the traditional play. We see in the traditional play there is a beginning, middle, and also end. But in the absurd plays, there is it's completely circular or fragmented way, and it contains unresolved meaning. Language in absurd drama frequently become the repetitive and meaningless. Reflection, the failure of the communication in the modern society. We can understand it by the conversation between Vladimir and Estrogan, and also by the speech of the Lucky. His irrational speech, philosophical speech to given to the Vladimir, Estragon, and the Pozo. In this context, waiting for the Godot become a central example of the absurd theater, where the endless waiting of the Vladimir and Estragon dramatize the uncertainty and the purposelessness of the human life. So now we discuss the waiting and absurd consciousness, waiting for the Godot. In the waiting for the Godot, waiting becomes the central dramatic action, symbolize the human search for the meaning in uncertain, indifferent universe. Vladimir and Estragon continue waiting for the Godot, despite his absence, reflecting the existential condition of the expecting purpose where none is guaranteed. Vladimir and Estragon both are waiting for a person who they never know. They they don't know how the Godot looks and who is the Godot and what they want from the Godot, but eventually they are waiting for him. The act of the waiting function as a symbolic quest for the meaning and revelation which the ultimately never arrives. And it's connected with the search for the meaning, but it's never arrives. The Esslin interpret this waiting as a universal human condition where the individual continue to hoping that the meaning or the purpose will eventually appear. Existential waiting, Kierkegaardian perspective. In Soren Kierkegaard's philosophy, existence is understood as a process of becoming something, where the individual constantly move towards an uncertain future. Waiting therefore reflect existential condition of the human life, in which individual continue to hope for the meaning or revelation that's remain uncertain. In the waiting for the Godot, Vladimir and Estragon endless waiting illustrate the process of becoming, where the existence is experienced through the anticipating rather than the fulfillment. They just anticipating by the waiting for the Godot. Their waiting highlight the subjective nature of the truth, and since meaning is not objectively given but created through the human reflection and expectation. Thus, the waiting becomes a philosophical condition of the existence. It is a compulsory part of our life, and human beings continue to live, hope, and search for the meaning despite the uncertainty. Estrangement and absurd experience. In the myth of Sisyphus, Albert Camus described that the absurd experience as a feeling of the estrangement, where the individual suddenly perceive themselves as a stranger in the world. For an example, a person who suddenly know that he is not fit in this world, and then he realized that his existence also is meaningless. This situation called the feeling of the estrangement. The critical perspective, Martin Essley argued that the waiting for the Godot represents absurdity of the human existence, where the individual wait for the meaning in the universe that offers none. Here is also a critical perspective of the Herbert Hochberg, James E. Robinson, Anurag Sharma also, and now we discuss conclusion. The analysis demonstrate that the both Albert Camus and Samuel Beckett explore the philosophical experience of the absurd through human consciousness and existential waiting. The research confirmed that the myth of Sisyphus, that the absurd arises from the conflict between the human desire and the meaning, and the indifferent universe which demand the awareness rather than the escape. The conflict of the human search for the meaning and silent nature of the universe. This conflict is actually the concept of the absurd. In the waiting of the Godot, the philosophical condition is the dramatized through the endless waiting, repetition, uncertainty, and revealing the psychological experience of the absurd consciousness. And ultimately, both texts reveal that the confronting the absurd does not lead to despair, but to a lucid recognition of the human existence, its continuous struggle for the meaning. This is infographic of this presentation, and these are the references. And now all free to ask question.
So my question is, if life is meaningless in both Camus and Beckett, why do their characters continue living instead of giving up?
because it's it's Camus says that this Camus reflect that waiting for something. It's like a human race trying to find meaning from the universe, but universe remains silent, and universe like a giant wall that never collapse. And if you give up from the waiting or something to do, then you lost. And what happens eventually, if you give up from this particular thing, then your workload maybe can increase. And they character both are continue living instead of giving up because of they have nothing to do better than it. Next question, please.
So my question is, how is waiting in Waiting for Godot different from ordinary waiting in real life?
So actually, in this question, waiting in the Waiting for the Godot and waiting in the real life, this both concepts are different, because waiting in the Waiting for the Godot reflected as a it's like a whole job, and it's like a compulsory thing to do, and there is no another thing better than to waiting. And in the real life, for an example, if you waiting for the bus, and bus is late for the 3 hours, and still you waiting for the bus, and eventually what happens, bus arrives, and bus arrives. And the second example for understanding this question's answer is that if you waiting for the appointment with the dentist, and eventually what happens, you went to a dentist, and what does the dentist do? Dentist pluck out your tooth and you become the toothless. And this is what happened. This is what the difference between the waiting for the Godot in this particular play, and also the real life difference in of the waiting. Thank you. So thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mittal Halaya. Today, I am going to present my topic Alienation, Power, and the Role of Art Crisis of Modern Identity in the Poetry of W.H. Auden. This is my academic information. This is table of contents. My research question is, how does W.H. Auden's poetry situated in the social and political upheavals of the 20th century reflect the crisis of modern identity through alienation and power, and in what ways does art mediated personal experience and societal critique? My hypothesis is W.H. Auden's poetry portrays modern identity as fractured and vulnerable due to societal power, structures, and existential alienation, while modernist poetic techniques such as fragmentation, symbolism, and narrative voice allow art to function as a critical medium for ethical reflection, social critique, and negotiation of individual and collective identity. Introduction. W.H. Auden's poetry serves as a profound reflection of the social, political, and existential upheavals of the 20th century, capturing the anxieties and dislocation of modern life. Through his nuanced exploration of alienation, Auden examines the estrangement of the individual within societal structure, revealing how social, political, and moral forces shape human experience. His works interrogate power not merely as a political authority, but as a subtle ethical and cultural frameworks that govern human interaction and reveal how individuals navigate these forces while confronting isolation, moral ambiguity, and historical crisis. Alienation and Auden's poetry. Auden's portrays psychological and social alienation as a central to modern existence. Poem like The Wanderer reveal characters trapped in a self-reflective despair, illustrating alienation within a societal and historical context. Alienation is not just personal but culturally symbolic, reflecting post-war dislocation and fractured social identities. Uh, Power and social critique. Oden interrogates power dynamics, both political authority and moral codes shaped individual experience. His poetry criticizes social hierarchies, exposing how institutions alienate the individual. Stop All the Clocks highlight personal grief under social and religious structures, linking private alienation to broader societal expectations. Art becomes a medium to question authority, revealing the interplay between power and human vulnerability. Role of art in modern identity. Now, Oden positions art as a mediator between inner identity and external societal pressures. Through poetic form, rhythm, and literary allusions, art negotiates ethical reflection and social critique. Poetry functions as both mirror and resistance, reflecting crisis while offering tools by self and societal interrogation. For example, The Age of Anxiety shows a poetic form guiding readers through personal and collective disorientation. Modernist techniques and expression. Oden employs modernist devices, fragmentation, shifting perspectives, and rhetorical complexity to convey identity crisis. Symbolism and riddling techniques creates a layer of meaning that interrogate individuals and social consciousness. Art functions as both object and process, shaping the audience perception of alienation and authority. Synthesis. Crisis of modern identity. The crisis of modern identity in Oden's poetry emerges at the intersections of alienation and societal power, with art as the interpretive lens. Poetry simultaneously critiques, documents, and theorizes modern human experience. Oden's work emphasizes the ethical responsibility of art, not mere reflection, but intervention into the human and social condition. Identity in Oden's vision is a fluid, fractured, and continuously negotiated through artistic engagement. Here is the infograph of my whole presentation. This shows the architect of anxiety, W.H. Oden, and the modern identity. Now move on to the conclusion. W.H. Oden's poetry continues to provide a timeless and incisive critique of alienation and power, underscoring the persistent relevance of questions surrounding modern identity. His work demonstrates that art is not merely a vehicle for aesthetic pleasure, but an essential medium for ethical reflection and societal critique, bridging the gap between personal experience and collective consciousness. Engaging with Oden's poetry illuminates contemporary issues of authority, social structure, and the fragile yet resilient nature of human identity. Highlighting the transformative potential of literature in both understanding and challenging societal norms. Here is my learning outcomes. I understand how W.H. Oden's poetry reflect the crisis of modern identity, including social, political, and existential dimensions. Analyze themes of alienation and their psychological, cultural, and historical significance in 20th century literature. Appreciate the ethical and mediating function of art, exploring how poetry negotiates personal and collective identity. I identify and interpret modernist techniques in audience poetry, including fragmentation, symbolism, and narrative complexity. Connect audience literary strategies to broader theoretical frameworks of identity, society, and culture. Develop the ability to perform textual analysis linking specific lines and poems to larger social and philosophical contexts. Recognize the contemporary relevance of audience work for understanding modern identity, societal dislocation, and the transformative power of literature. These are the references. Thank you. Now, questions are welcome.
Hello. Mittal, my question is, how does W.H. Auden redefine the alienation in the context of the modernity?
Auden redefines alienation not just as a social isolation, but as an existential and moral fragmentation, where a person's inner self becomes disconnected from external reality under modern pressures. Thank you. Next question.
My question is, does Auden believe art can resist totalitarian power?
Yes, Auden believes that art can resist totalitarian power. Art because art is resist by preserving truth, fostering critical thinking, and maintaining ethical awareness against ideological manipulation. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Well, इसमें okay.
Hello everyone. Today I am going to present on absurdity, waiting, and the search for the self, philosophical interpretations of waiting for Godot from ancient Indian thought to modern society. These are my academic and presentation details. My research question is, how does waiting for Godot represent absurdity and existential waiting as a crisis of selfhood, and how can this be reinterpreted through Western existentialism and Indian philosophy in the context of modern alienation? My hypothesis is waiting for Godot presents absurdity and perpetual waiting as expressions of a fragmented and unstable self. When interpreted through Western existentialism and ancient Indian philosophy, this condition is not entirely meaningless. Instead, the search for meaning can be reconfigured as a philosophical and spiritual inquiry, especially the context of modern socio-cultural alienation. This is table of content. Waiting for Godot presents existence as a condition of uncertainty and deferral, where meaning is constantly postponed, reflecting the instability of human life. Waiting functions not merely as an action, but as a state of being symbolizing the human condition of living in anticipation between hope and meaninglessness. At the same time, this condition can be connected to ancient Indian philosophy, where reality is often understood as Maya and the true self remains hidden beneath confusion and misperception. Absurdity as an existential condition, waiting for Godot presents absurdity as a fundamental condition of human existence, where individuals confront a world that offers no inherent meaning or logical structure. According to the Ullah, in absurdity, no meaning exists in this universe for man, but this is man himself who has to search for the meaning. Existential waiting and temporal uncertainty. Waiting for Godot presents waiting as an existential condition where individuals remain suspended and in anticipation without resolution or fulfillment. Time in the play appears unstable and disoriented as past, present, and future lose clear boundaries, creating a sense of temporal uncertainty. Vladimir and Estragon's endless waiting reflects the human tendency to project meaning into an uncertain future, even when such expectations remain unrealized. Quest for identity and the problem of selfhood. Waiting for Godot presents the self as unstable and fragmented, where identity is not fixed but constantly shifting and uncertain. The character struggles with memory, recognition, and continuity, suggesting that the self lacks coherence and cannot be fully defined. Their inability to make decisive choices highlights an existential paralysis where the search for identity is hindered by uncertainty and lack of purpose. Indian philosophical perspective on self and existence. Waiting for Godot can be interpreted through Indian philosophy as reflecting the concept of Maya, where reality appears fragmented and uncertain rather than absolute. The instability of character's identity parallels the idea that the true self remains hidden while individuals remain trapped in superficial and transient experiences. The act of waiting can be seen as a state of spiritual ignorance or incompleteness, where individuals seek meaning externally rather than realizing it within. Unlike existentialism, which emphasizes meaninglessness, Indian philosophy suggests that confusion and suffering arise from a misperception of reality, not from the absence of meaning. In modern society and existential alienation, waiting for Godot reflects the condition of modern society where individuals experience alienation, isolation, and a loss of meaning in an increasingly fragmented world. The character's endless waiting symbolizes the passively and stagnation of individuals in modern systems where actions is replaced by routine and uncertainty. In this slide, I put comparative analysis of Indian philosophy and Western perspective, how they both interprets the absurdity, waiting, and self. My hypothesis proven that the study confirms that waiting for Godot presents absurdity and existential waiting as central expressions of a fragmented and unstable self, as seen in the characters' repetitive actions, uncertainty, and lack of identity. From the perspective of Western existentialism, this condition reflects meaninglessness, alienation, and the crisis of selfhood in modern society. In conclusion, waiting for Godot ultimately presents human existence as fundamentally absurd, uncertain, and unresolved, where individuals remain trapped in a cycle of waiting that reflects the human tendency to seek meaning in a world that offers no clear answer, thereby exposing the tension between hope and meaninglessness. These are my learning outcomes. These are references. And now questions are open.
My question is, if life does not give us a clear purpose, what are some everyday ways that people today try to build their own meaning?
When life doesn't give us a clear purpose, people can create meaning through relationships, their personal goals, work, creativity, and also with their personal beliefs in existentialism. This means we are free to choose our own purpose in life. Another one question.
My question is, in what ways can the concept of Maya in Indian philosophy help us reinterpret the apparent meaningless and confusion in the play?
According to the concept of Maya, the world is not real but is an illusion. So the meaninglessness and confusion in the waiting for Godot are not because of life has life has no any meaning, but because of the characters who don't understand realities perfectly. If they realizes their true self, they can find meaning in life. So thank you. This is from my side.
No. So, hello everyone, myself Kruti Vyas, and today I'm going to present my topic on, is Big Brother winning? Social media, AI, and governments are using Orwell's framework to control our minds today. So, this is my presentation details and academic details. This is a table of contents which I will discuss today. So, First, in 1949, George Orwell wrote 1984, a warning about a world where Big Brother uses surveillance to smartphone in your pockets, and the Ministry of Truth is mirrored in fake news and algorithms. And newspeak is reflected in the political buzzwords used today to simplify or hide the truth. So here is my research question and hypothesis that my research question is, do contemporary technologies of artificial intelligence, social media, algorithms, and states surveillance operate through a mechanism analogs to Orwell's system of mind control in 1984, and do they pose an equal threat to human freedom of thought? So my hypothesis is that while contemporary technologies of artificial intelligence, social media, and state surveillance mirror the control mechanism of Orwell's Big Brother, their power remains incomplete, held in check by democratic freedom and the critical awareness that dystopian literature like 1984 continue to inspire. Key ideas from 1984 and what they mean today. So Orwell's 1984 concept mapped directly to this 2026, because Big Brother is represent by giant tracking our digital footprints. For example, telescreens are always on smart devices. We practice double think by using the very apps we know. So we know us to protest that surveillance, and the newspeaks lives in cooperative speak designed to hide meaning, and the Ministry of Truth is mirrored in the deepfakes and algorithms, our personal truth as well. So this infograph shows the circular data influence system. It start with Big Brother, that how it building a digital profile of you, and this profile is analyzed to predict your behavior. The telescreen is act as a two-way street. You receive info while being monitored, and finally Newspeak and Newspeak are used to align your thinking with the system of goals and tracked through regular behavior metrics. So we are all being watched. So watch. So Big Brother is winning because the telescreen is winning. Big Brother is winning because the telescreen is in your pocket. For example, with 5.4 billion users, social media platform practice as a surveillance capitalism, and they are harvesting data to shape your beliefs and even manipulate your emotions as well. And since 9/11, mass surveillance has recorded millions of private messages and destroying our intellectual privacy, the ability to think and explore ideas without being watched. Fake news is a ministry of the truth. How? So whoever controls, as Orwell said, whoever controls the past controls the future. Whoever controls the present controls the past. So today AI deepfakes make it impossible to know what really happened today, and effectively acting as a modern ministry of truth. And outrage because this is time most probably anger spread faster than truth, and spreading propaganda automatically. So a platform like Google's YouTube now have a power to quietly shape your entire worldview by deciding what content is allowed and what content is not allowed today. So specifically in this slide, I would like to express the detailed infographic, because this infographic compares Orwell's theme of control to modern social pressure. Through being one person is like being cancelled online, and Orwell's Crime Stop is now self censorship on social media. So basically, people are so afraid of social punishment, and they stop speaking freely, and creating a chilling effect. So here both systems are aim for the same three results. First result is silence, second one is conformity, and the last one is obedience. Against Big Brother has not won yet. How we can see here on the other side, we are still free, ways Winston Smith was not, because citizens in a democracies can still protest and change leader through election. And we have privacy laws like GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, and in independent courts to protect us. And technology also helps freedom, and the internet is used to explore the fake news through fake checkers as well. And importantly, we can see our language still evolves naturally rather than being engineered by center party to limit thought. So both sides at a glance. How to summarize? The side highlights behavioral tracking, AI manufactured reality, and social punishment. But the second against side is emphasize specifically privacy laws, free praise, and our ability to think critically. While the tools of control are powerful, and our society still allows for citizen accountability rather than just state-sponsored torture, and providing us a shield against total manipulation. So what does this all means? In short, the goal is the same as Orwell's time, but the method is softer, using and algorithm instead of police and prisons. So the paradox is that we voluntarily voted for our own telescreen by giving away data for likes, and however, reading and the studying 1984 is an act of a resistance, because it naming the system is the first step to fighting it, and then truth remains a revolutionary act. So the conclusion is Big Brother is winning, but he has not won yet, because we still possess the freedom to protest, vote, and read, freedom Winston Smith never had. But our awareness is only thing standing in the way of total control. And here Orwell did not write 1940 to tell the future, but he wrote it as a warning. We must pay attention and ensure that truth always telling remains our most powerful act. So to conclude this presentation, provide a comparative analysis within the context of democratic society, because I find one gap that I must not that this presentation is focused on softer surveillance of the West, but authoritarian models such as China's social credit system offer an even more literal interpretation of Orwell's work. And the future direction is further research is needed to into how AI manipulate emotions and scale and the long-term impact of algorithm governance on the human psyche. So these are the references. Thank you for your attention. I am now open for any question.
My question to you, in a world where you can't get a job, a bank account, or an education without these apps, is it really a choice anymore, or has the system simply made surrender the only way to survive?
Yeah. So firstly, choice is an illusion. When apps are required for jobs, banking, and school, it is actually systematically coercion, because where surrendering your privacy is a mandatory to entry free for living in this modern society. Next one.
My question is, do you think a system that controls us through pleasure and convenience is actually more dangerous and harder to fight than one that uses pain?
Yeah, so first of all, control through pleasure is more dangerous because it removes the specifically desire to resist, and while pain creates an enemy to fight and makes us love our own captivity, and making soft control much harder to break than a dictatorship. Okay, so that is all from my side. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Myself Grishma Rawal, and today I am going to present on Ishiguro's Global Modernism, British Narrative Techniques with Japanese Sensibility. These are my academic and presentation details, the table of contents, and the research question focuses on to what extent does Ishiguro's narrative style reflect the principles of global modernism rather than Eurocentric modernism. So hypothesis is Ishiguro's narrative style reflects global modernism by adapting modernist techniques to non-Western historical or cultural contexts rather than adhering strictly to Eurocentric modernist traditions. And his use of unreliable narration, memory, and narrative ambiguity aligns more closely with the global modernist concerns of cultural hybridity and historical responsibility than with the Eurocentric modernism's emphasis on aesthetic fragmentation alone. And his narrative style also exemplifies global modernism by transcending the Eurocentric literary boundaries through its fusion of modernist technique with Japanese cultural sensibility. So, beginning with introduction, Kazuo Ishiguro occupies a distinctive position in contemporary literature as a transnational or global modernist writer. Through writing in English and employing a British narrative technique, his works, particularly An Artist of the Floating World, are deeply informed by Japanese cultural sensibility. And this fusion allows Ishiguro to explore the memory, guilt, and historical responsibility through a restrained and introspective narrative voice. And the novel reflects how modernism extends beyond Europe, adapting itself to diverse cultural contexts. And moving further towards global modernism, the concept and literary framework in his work. So it extends modernist literature beyond its Western origins to include cross cultural and post war experiences of Japan and England. While early modernism focused on fragmentation and alienation in Europe, global modernism views these concerns as shared across cultures, shaped by historical crisis and moral uncertainty. So we kind of see a similarity between the two, as well as a difference as well. And in this framework, Ishiguro exemplifies the approach by applying modernist narrative techniques and strategies to post-war Japanese history. And this tension between remembering and narrating war memories has been significant theme in the discussion of post-war Japanese literature, because it is closely tied to the broader issue of historical consciousness, Reikishi Ninishiki Mondai, in post-war Japan, demonstrating that modernism functions as a transnational literary mode rather than a purely Western movement. Then coming forward towards the British narrative techniques in Ishiguro's fiction. So he draws heavily on the British realist and modernist narrative traditions, particularly his use of first person narration, understatement, and psychological depth. In Artist of the Floating World, the narrator Masuji Ono appears courteous, rational, and self-assured. Upon he is trying to marry off his younger daughter, a process which requires him to symbolically kill his old self, yet his narrative is shaped by selective memory and subtle self-justification. And this creates an unreliable narrative voice in which truth emerges gradually through contradictions and hesitations. We see the parallelism between how he wants to fit in into the society, whereas he also wants to imply his own thoughts, and this shows the conflict in narration of his own thoughts. And the fear of letting go is central to all Ishiguro's novels, as trauma, loss, and nostalgia are constitutive of his novels. And since these experiences and emotions shape the characters' lives, and narrations include the Bartanian principle of effort after meaning, especially those drag analysis in the final part, which centers on the notion of nostalgia. And here, trauma, loss, and nostalgia are consecutive of Ishiguro's novels. And these experiences and emotions shapes the characters' lives and narrations, and include the Bartanian principle of effort after meaning. The Japanese aesthetic sensibility and cultural ethos. So the narrative in this novel is shaped not only by the Japanese aesthetic principles such as mono no aware, the pathos of transience, and ma, meaningful silence, but also by what Rebecca Kearney terms transitional realism. And rather than presenting this aesthetics as authentically or purely Japanese, Ishiguro filters them through a deliberately mediated narrative voice that appears through overt emotional intensity, and moral declines are not expressed over there, but through subdued recollection and narrative gaps. And these gaps are crucial, as they are not merely aesthetic silences, but sites where meaning is negotiated between the narrator and the reader, which reinforces the idea that memory and responsibility are unstable and meditated. And his narratives are marked by numerous omissions, misleading pieces of information, and creative misrememberings, so which obscure the narrator's motivations and the plot. So these gaps are very signs of repressed guilt and result in narrative unreliability. So meaning here thus lies as much in what is withheld and as in what is stated. And emotional repression here produces a subtle, restrained, and fragmented narrative form, which creates a subdued tone that mirrors post-war Japan's collective uncertainty and moral hesitation. The synthesis of form and sensibility. So Ishiguro's originality lies in his ability to fuse British narrative form with Japanese cultural sensibility, and the Western modernist device of unreliable narration is employed here to explore the Eastern concepts of honor, shame, and collective responsibility. And here Ono is calm, reflective, and his voice here marks a deep ethical unease, allowing personal memory to become a site where national history is quietly examined. And this synthesis avoids the dramatic confrontation of model resolution, and instead ambiguity dominates the narrative, reflecting a world where certainty has collapsed. And through this hybrid form, Ishiguro critiques artistic and political complexity while respecting cultural modes of restraint, creating a distinctly global modernist narrative voice. To conclude, I would say that this novel exemplifies Ishiguro's contribution to global modernism, where literary technique and cultural sensibility intersect across national boundaries. And by combining British narrative restraint with Japanese aesthetic values, he reimagines the modernism as a transnational mode concerned with memory, guilt, and moral accountability. And novel thus demonstrates that modernist anxieties of historical rupture, ethical uncertainty, and the unstable identity are not confined to the West. Instead, Ishiguro presents modernism as a shared global condition shaped through the cultural interaction and historical experience. I have made a comparative table where the narrative voice, how it differs from Ishiguro's style and the British writing style. Ishiguro's style is quite restrained, introspective, whereas British writing style is clear, confident, and articulate. The narrator in Ishiguro's style is often unreliable, memory driven, and it is in British writing style generally reliable or openly ironic. The language is minimalistic and controlled prose, and British is rich and descriptive diction. And the use of silence and omission is creating a meaning in Ishiguro's work. And the British writing style focuses on how the meaning is conveyed through dialogue or action. The narrative structure in Ishiguro is fragmented and non-linear, and in British is mostly linear or clearly ordered. The tone is polite, subdued, and reflective. Whereas, to contrast this, the British writing style is assertive, ironic, or didactic. Then the treatment of emotion in Ishiguro's form is suppressed and indirect expression, and the British one is more openly expressed. Moral judgment is ambiguous and non-directive, whereas British focuses on a clear moral stance. And the thematic focus is on memory, guilt, and responsibility in Ishiguro's work, whereas British is on society, class, and moral growth. And this cultural sensibility focuses on the Japanese aesthetics, restraint, and impermanence in Ishiguro's work. And British focuses on British realism and modernism. So in Ishiguro's style, we can say that reader's role is as an active interpreter, whereas in British, it is a guided interpretation by the writer. So modernist influence is global and transnational modernism in Ishiguro, whereas British is on a Eurocentric modernism. So the justification of my research question and hypothesis is that it is associated hypotheses and are justified by Ishiguro's distinctive narrative practice, which reworks the modernist techniques within a non-Western historical and cultural framework. And Ishiguro employs features commonly associated with British and European modernism, such as unreliable narration, fragmented memory, and narrative restraint, but redirects them towards concerns central to the post-war Japanese society, including collective guilt, moral responsibility, and cultural transition. And rather than privileging aesthetic fragmentation or formal experimentation for its own sake, the narrative ambiguity here serves as an ethical function, allowing silence, omission, and understatement to express culturally specific modes of shame and accountability. And this fusion of modernist form with Japanese sensibility demonstrates that how Ishiguro's work is aligning more closely with global modernism as it transcends the Eurocentric literary boundaries and presents modernism as a transnational mode shaped by cross-cultural experience and historical context. These are my learning outcomes, the references, and thank you. And if anyone would like to have any questions, feel free to ask.
My question to you, can online apologies be compared to Ono's attempts at self-justification?
Yes, indeed. If we look into the present contemporary times, then Ono's justification of how he's constantly justifying himself, his art, and how he did what he did. So, in present times, also the people are structured through the lens of society, how people will perceive them, and how will people think about themselves. And giving one recent example when Ranveer Singh he did some Kantara mimicry, and the audience was quite troubled by his behavior. So he has to give a justification of why he did what he did, and he apologized. So this shows how society constrains human being of not being fully themselves, even as artists, and how artists' views also shape due to the political or social hierarchies going around during whichever time they are performing or doing their art. So yes, a parallelism between Ono's attempts of self-justification can be very prominently mirrored during the present times. Anyone else?
Hello. So my question is that Ishiguro uses silence and omissions. So how does this compare to scene, genre, message, or ghosting in digital communication?
So yes, partially this silence and omission are quite similar but distinctively different, as Ishiguro presents the character of Masuji Ono, and his writing style is differing in that way. He's using silence to show the psychological convictions happening in the story and how these pauses are making certain meanings, whereas in the present times, while texting or while even messaging someone, someone just reads our messages and does not reply, it just means that they are taking time for themselves, and they are not in the mood of reply. So it goes into a rather a casual sense than implying any meaning. So Ishiguro's use of silence and omission is quite psychological and relevant to their times, and it shows the depth of what the meaning is conveyed between the silences. And whereas the scenes on messages and especially ghosting can be it can be considered as an extreme omission, like they are not in the mood to talk to you, and then that results into the person who is sending the messages, their psychological interpretation that did they do something wrong, or is this person not interested in talking to me. It creates psychological tensions, but in a rather casual way or on a personalized note, whereas here the Ishiguro's works use silence and omission as a part of intellectual depth rather than a means of casuality. Thank you. That is it from my side.
Okay, so that was the last one. So by and large, as we have seen yesterday also, the content is quite good. Infographics also are very relevantly prepared and put at the right place in the slides. Many of you came with the idea of making a summary of the entire presentation in form of infographic. That also is a good idea. One slide gives an overview of the entire idea that you are trying to explore. Those who are not doing, you can also try that idea. So content-wise, slide-wise, that all is okay. A few things that we suggested about using Canva. So some of you started using that and prepared the first slide based on that also. Still study the banners and still try to add whatever things are missing in that. For example, you are making this presentation in a particular context, like semester 2 student, season 2 for this particular paper. So that content also should come into your slide, in which context this presentation is being made. Reading is still there, that try to read more than try to speak more rather than reading slide one by one. Do that, try to make that attempt here. There were a few questions. Many presentations were on 1984 and Artist of the Floating World and about surveillance and AI and other things there. So some of the questions, like I think to Vanita, Kruti has asked this question. If willingly we share our data, then can it be considered as surveillance or not? And similar questions were there in many other things also. So in this context, or we'll see others also if we'll get to that, the point is that who accesses our data and who has control over our data. That is important. If I share my data, do I have a control over data? Will people ask for my permission before using the data, or they can do anything with the data? That is where the point comes. So it is about making policies. In democratic societies, people debate, discuss, and they make policies. So as of now, today, whatever we think is a fair way to use data of people, that policy is made. And then tomorrow, if we come to know that, well, in this way, it is not fair, it is supporting companies, not to people, then we will say, let us change the policy. So in democracy, everything is changed. Nothing is permanent. So people again come, debate, discuss, they do seminar, conferences, they deliberate on those topics, critically analyze the thing, and they come with new policy. And if they again find that this policy is helping again somebody or few people to control the other people, then again people will say, let us change the policies. So that is how the democratical institutions are stronger when that happens. When that doesn't happen, then there is a problem. Now, people would say, where would this happen? Where would this happen? It happens in parliaments. It happens in Dhara Sabha. So our representatives are there. The people who are representing our area, they are representing us. So they should know what we want, like what is good for the people. They should be aware. They should not be conscious that what is good for my party. They should be aware about what is good for my people. I am here because they voted me and I am representing them. So once that becomes a reality, democracy becomes stronger. Then everything operates. Otherwise, that doesn't happen. So as normally we see that people are not aware also about to whom they are voting. They only see the symbol. They go and vote for symbols, not to the people. They don't know whether this people you can approach them if you have a problem. Will they listen to you? Will they take your question to Delhi, or they will be silenced by big brothers? Every party has a big brother. So if their big brothers will silence our leaders, then what will we do? Then it means if that possibilities are there, it means democracy is weaker. And people have to work on that ideas. So that was this, that sharing a data becomes a surveillance if it is controlled by somebody. And this another question Grishma also asked, that can Big Brother be positive, or can only be negative only, or not? Now, the very idea of Big Brother is that there is somebody who is protector. Now, we want a society where we don't require a protector. Society should be so good and healthy that nobody requires anybody as a protector. System protects everybody. So why should I protect you, or why should my parents protect me, or I protect my children? It should not be. As Khalil Gibran said, that these are not your children. These are the children of society. They are children of humanity. People, it is so nobody should be the protector of anybody. So that idea is criticized. When we talk about Raksha Bandhan, we say it is lesser Raksha, more Bandhan. So protection also always comes with Bandhan. It always comes with control. So if you give somebody your reins, then you become a lucky, and he becomes Pozzo. It is as simple as that. That no, I don't want any master. I want a system which protects me. I want system which protects everybody, not anybody. Like it is brother, real brother, or a husband, or a father, any male figure, or any divine figure. Also, we don't want that when the scene is spreading a lot, then somebody will come and protect us. No, we don't want that somebody to come and protect. We want a better society where there is no need for somebody to come. I don't want to hope for that being, that second coming, or third coming, or ninth coming, or 10th coming, or whatever number people give. That is this idea that Big Brother's problem is this, that why we need somebody to protect the other being. I think Siddharth also was asked, or Siddhiba asked the similar question. Okay? In the same way, we can answer that also. The reference to Black Mirror also was good. Sanjay, I think, made a representation. We are connected with Black Mirror. Some of you made very long presentations, so you have to see that the bell is ringing for you. You remain completely indifferent to the bell ringing, and you keep on using the time. So make it shorter, for 8 minutes. Remember TED Talks. In TED Talk, in 15 minutes, they give very big idea. 8 minutes is too much to share an idea in the presentation. And brevity is important. Brevity, to be brief. So in briefly how to express oneself, that also is a skill. That also we have to master. If you want to tell long thing, then there is assignment. Keep on writing 100 pages. There is no limit. It is limitless. Keep on writing n numbers of pages that you want to write there. Here, time limit is there. And we have to learn that also, that in lesser time, if I have to speak, then how will I do that? And in exam, there is in between. You have to write, but you have to manage time and then write. Both the things you have to do. So you have to keep a ticking clock before you. As soon as the time reaches there, you have to stop writing that answer. You have to start writing another answer. So based on the time, you have to manage your everything. Otherwise, last question answers will remain incomplete only. And that will never give you a good scoring if any of the answers are incomplete. Even Sagar had this question, another thing, misuse of Orwell by Western powers. So these Western powers are normally capitalist power, and they misuse, because Orwell was Marxist, socialist, and he was a critic of that also. When Marxism, socialism, communism was misused by Russians and other powers, he was a critic of that. So what we learn from Orwell is that you may be a follower of a particular ideology, but if you see that this ideology is manipulated by some political power, you become a critic of that. You don't become a blind bhakta of that ideology. When you say that this is problematic, then you become a critic of the ideology in which you believed also. That is very important thing that we can learn from George Orwell. He himself being a follower of that ideology, but he is able to criticize when there are dangers to those things. Yes, Radhika, you are doing this early submissions. You have to see this, that after listening only you have to do. This is very simple thing. And I hope that such thing also we have to tell, that this is not a mere karma kand. કે ચલો આહુતિ આપવાની છે તો બેસી જાય યજ્ઞ કાંઠે અને બે ચાર ચપટી જે હાથમાં આવે એ હોમતા આવીએ. એ રીતે યજ્ઞમાં લોકો જાતા હોય. બોલાવ્યા છે તો ચાલો જઈને બેસીએ અને જે હાથમાં મૂકે એ હોમીને આવતા રહીએ. એને કર્મકાંડ કહેવાય. આપણને કઈ ખ્યાલ જ નહીં શું કામ કરીએ છીએ આ, why we are doing this. એ રીતે આપણે કરીએ સમજ્યા વગર, કોઈ લોજિક અન્ડરસ્ટેન્ડિંગ વગર, કરવા ખાતર કરી નાખવાનું. That is called કર્મકાંડ. So don't turn this academic activity into karmakand. Understand the logic of everything. If you don't understand, you can ask why this is required. Ahmed Sukam karvu જોઈએ. Yeah, I will explain you what is the logic behind that. So there is an academic logic for doing this peer evaluation, self-evaluation. There is lots of learning in that. But if you convert that into a ritualistic thing, then there is no learning. It means you are not stressing your mind to understand why all these things are important. Nidhi also made a good connection with Achedin and Waiting for Godot, and good articles were referred in the presentation. Mulraj defended well the questions that were asked. You also asked a question to Mansi, that life gives a purpose or this. Now, when we say life gives, that is a problematic statement. Life doesn't give anything. Giving, taking is by human beings. Life is not a human being. So in life, things are happening automatically, accidentally, things happen. That is how life is. So when we personify, we get into that semantic difficulty. As Northrop Frye tries to say, you have to first unlock the words. And what is the meaning? When I ask life gives, then I don't know how to tackle this. Then I have to say that life never gives anything. Life is nothing. We are being, life is not a being. Life is something that keeps on happening automatically, accidentally on its own. So it doesn't give or take anything from us. Neither gives nor take anything. Our surrounding is a reality, that is nature, but it is indifferent to us. It is indifferent to us. It is not giving us anything. The sun is not giving us light and photosynthesis and food and energy. It is there. We adjusted ourselves to that. We evolved to adjust. Whatever is there, we adjusted, and so we are surviving. When that will change, we will change. So, for example, people say that if oxygen will decrease and carbon dioxide will increase, then those people who will be able to live with carbon dioxide will be able to survive. So we adjust with our surrounding. That is evolution. That is how we do. So nobody is giving or taking anything from us. It is the thing that is, the life is there and we are there. And the things keep on happening on its own. Grishma also connected with the idea of global idea, not only Eurocentric, but from instead of that looking at the thing as a global idea, which is a very interesting point to replace a word of Eurocentric with global kind of a parameter also. Okay, so with this, we end our session here.